In a future where nearly half the population is unemployed, a virtual game emerges that promises to change everything. But there's one catch. You bet your life to play, and it's in this digital hell that an ordinary guy enters, not for money, but to find his missing sister. Inside the game, every stage is a nightmare, every mistake can kill, and no one can be trusted. But while everyone else is just trying to survive, he starts going beyond, facing impossible challenges, breaking the rules and realizing that this game isn't just a game. There are contracts, insane powers, and a hierarchy that turns players into something far greater. And in the middle of all this chaos, he stops being just another participant and starts becoming something that can dominate the entire system. And without further ado, let's get into the video. In the year 2035, AI is completely integrated into everyone's lives, just as cell phones once became. While it brought convenience to people, it also greatly reduced labor costs. But in 2039, with the birth of the brain, although production efficiency increased, it also directly caused a huge number of people to lose their jobs. This triggered a nationwide wave of resistance against artificial intelligence, but resistance could not change the tide of technological progress. In the end, countless people had no choice but to gamble with their lives by taking part in games developed by the brain, serving as entertainment and gambling material for the upper-class elite in order to earn income, using their lives to please those powerful individuals. The name of the game is Gold Game, better known as the Game of Gold. As long as you keep winning in the survival game, you can obtain enormous wealth, until you eventually gain the brain's authority and make a leap in class. A boy named Chen thinks that he is now forced to participate in that game, because only by continuing to win will he be able to find her. He is the brain's lead researcher. One of the participants was a little frightened because he had heard that if they were eliminated inside that game, they would also be eliminated in real life. He asked the others if that can really be true. Wang Qiang tells the other young man to stop talking nonsense because that is indeed true, it is already happening, and asks if he did not see those others who ended up being eliminated in the games and suffered an electric shock that sent them to the afterlife. He stresses that if a player removes the helmet halfway through, that will also be considered a violation of the game's rules, and he will be instantly electrocuted, which means there is no way to escape other than by winning. Otherwise, why would it be so easy to make money? Even so, he points out that it is not too late to give up. The frightened young man explains that he has gambling debts, and was forced to play that game so he could win money to pay them off, and that if he gives up and cannot pay his debts, he will also be eliminated, so he has no other choice but to try. Zhao Yukai says that he is very eager to test that out because he has long heard that killing people inside the game is not against the law. He looks at all the other players and asks them not to be eliminated too early because he does not want the game to end too quickly. The protagonist looks at that guy and thinks that he entered the game for the pleasure of killing others. And that is only to be expected because lunatics like that exist everywhere. Suddenly a voice welcomes everyone and asks them to enter the game instance. That is the room of the first instance, a spacious hall. A woman appears, greeting all the players and explains that she will be the referee of that game and that her name is Lil Rabbit. She begins explaining the rules of the game, saying that this is the novice level and that everyone must be reminded of the following rules in order to clear the game successfully. She snaps her fingers and a system screen appears saying that the number of survivors in that round must fall to 3 or less, since the boss is absolutely unbeatable. She points out that the rule is very simple and clear, and that concludes the explanation. Then she wishes everyone a very pleasant game, hoping to have the honor of seeing them again. Yukai is confused and asks if anyone managed to understand what that woman just said. The protagonist begins to reflect on the matter because if the number of survivors must be 3 or less, that means that out of the 10 people there, 7 must be eliminated. However, he does not understand how that can be possible. Suddenly, a hologram begins to appear, and people are startled, asking what that is and what is going on. The hologram turns into a giant snake and starts attacking people who run for their lives. The snake begins eliminating some of the players, and the others keep running, asking how they are supposed to deal with that because they cannot hide, much less fight that monster, which means the only option is to wait for death. The protagonist shouts for everyone to spread out and not stay together. Even so, he cannot understand what kind of beginner level that is. And perhaps they really do need to wait until 7 people are eliminated by that monster before they can pass. The snake keeps advancing toward them and turns toward Chen, but at the last second he manages to dodge the bite and jumps behind a pillar. He notices that after the snake managed to eliminate 2 players, its tail clearly became longer along with its ability to turn at 90-degree angles. He remembers that the main game of that round should be the famous video game, and if it is Snake, that means the snake's head can only turn at 90-degree angles. And as long as he can remain at a 90-degree angle from the snake's head, for example 45 degrees, the snake's head will need 2 steps to reach him, although that only buys a little time to prolong the fight. Yukai notices that the snake was heading toward him and tries to run, but he still thought the whole thing was a joke and asks what that woman meant by absolutely unbeatable, because he does not want to be eliminated in a place like that. But as soon as he looks ahead, he is shocked. The snake was right in front of him, preparing to bite him. Even so, he manages to dodge and asks when that monster appeared in front of him. But before he can complain about anything, the snake resumes chasing him. He runs again in desperation, trying to calm down a little because he needs to find a way to get rid of that thing, since if this continues, it is only a matter of time before he is eliminated. While running, he notices that the protagonist was hiding behind the pillar, and he is the only one close enough, so he thinks the protagonist could give his life to save him. He changes direction and starts running behind the pillar. Meanwhile, the protagonist was thinking that the brain would never create such a purely elimination-based mission just to eliminate players, so the crucial information is probably the second rule. The snake is absolutely unbeatable. But it did not say the snake could not be eliminated. And according to the rules of the snake game itself, if the snake's head hits its own body, it will be eliminated. And as long as he remains constantly at a 90-degree angle from the snake's head, it will need at least 2 steps to bite him. And during that time, there may be a chance for it to hit its own body. He thinks that no matter what happens, he cannot just stand there waiting for death, so he needs to try. But while he was thinking through that plan, Yukai appears behind him and grabs him, telling him to have a good trip, and asking him not to blame him on the road to the underworld. He throws the protagonist into the snake's mouth, and while being swallowed, he asks himself whether he is really going to be eliminated. He remembers the conversation he had with his sister when she was showing him the new dish she had prepared and asking him to taste it to see whether it turned out well. He realizes that, apparently, when life and death are at stake, he really can see his life flashing before his eyes. His sister was saying that everything was fine because she is not a child anymore and that little injury is nothing, because seeing the protagonist eating happily was already worth it. Jin Cancan points out that she had not gone so many years without eating rice for nothing, because from then on she would take care of all the protagonist's meals. However, the protagonist was a little irritated by his memories, because his sister did not keep her word. She had promised that she would cook for him every day, but that was the last meal she managed to prepare for him. On a strange night, a sudden change destroyed all the good things. He lost his job as the brain's researcher and was crushed under enormous debt. Completely destroyed by depression, the protagonist was drowning himself in alcohol. His sister tried to comfort him, but he only told her not to worry about him. Even so, Can did not give up and asked what nonsense he was talking about because he was her brother. So how could she leave him like that? He had thought that she would grow resentful toward him and, in the end, would give up and leave him alone. But she did not do that. Seeing her brother sink deeper and deeper, she often went to him, telling him not to worry, because she would solve the financial situation, since she was no longer a child who could only hide behind him and be protected. Because of that, she entered that cursed game to try to save him. Determined, she said that maybe she could do something, and after that she never came back. That is why he must find her no matter the cost. The snake had bitten half of the protagonist's body, causing him an extremely serious injury, but knowing that, because of his weakness, his sister took the risk and is now missing, he shouts that he cannot die in a place like that. He gathers all his strength and starts trying to get out of the snake's mouth, but only half of his body manages to come out. He falls to the ground and realizes that he is about to lose his life, but he still refuses to die. With each passing second, he feels his will fading because his consciousness is beginning to go dark. But at the very last second, a screen appears in front of him saying that employee ID has been detected and successfully activated. The protagonist is taken to a completely strange place and asks if he has not yet been eliminated and why he is in that place. The system screen informs the protagonist that the system is linked exclusively to player Chen, and that administrator privileges have been activated. Level 1 administrator privileges. Code editing, allowing free editing of attribute points, only for himself. The protagonist remains confused, asking what the system is, but decides to test it, and when he looks at it, he sees the attribute panel and thinks that it is like adding points in a game. That brings him great hope, because if he is right, there is a great chance to turn that game around, as long as he focuses on agility to increase his speed. But then he sees the endurance and strength options, and thinks that something is wrong, because increasing speed just to keep escaping will not help in that situation, and what he truly needs at that moment is strength. As soon as he chooses what he wants to increase, the system informs him that the attribute editing was successful. In addition, the system also detects missing player data and asks whether he would like to restore it. The system also issues an alert saying that he can edit and allocate personal attributes at any time, and that every level gained will increase all attributes. He confirms the choice and thinks that with those abilities, he can maximize a single attribute at any moment, becoming even stronger as the attributes improve with future level ups. He truly does not care about the rules of the game because he will do anything to rescue his sister. The system informs him that the strength increase has been applied and the data restoration as well. Automatically, his legs are rebuilt and the snake comes toward him. But this time, the protagonist is completely enraged. The snake tries to bite him and starts swallowing, but he manages to pry open the snake's mouth with one hand and, with the other, grabs the snake's tongue. His eyes begin to shine, his breathing grows heavier, and a strange aura starts to come out of his body. He asks the snake whether it really likes eating so much, because he wants to see who will eat whom in there. He bites the snake's tongue, making it feel intense pain and throw him out of its mouth. Chen lands in a heroic pose and takes a deep breath. The aura around his body is still terrifying, making all the other players stare at him in fear and ask whether he is really human. Chen looks at the snake and wonders if the attack worked, since a health bar appeared on it, showing that he managed to take away 1 point of its health. Even so, he is satisfied with that result because it means that Snake is not completely immune to physical attacks. However, he realizes that with his current power, killing that snake by force is not realistic, and that even if he sacrifices other attributes to pile everything into strength, it would still be difficult to face that beast head-on, and at best, he would only be able to hold out for a brief moment. So perhaps it is better to continue with the previous plan and put all the points into agility, because then he will be able to use the rules of the snake game. The snake tries to attack again, but the protagonist dodges, thinking that in order to make the snake's head hit its own body, he needs to position himself correctly because in the original game settings, if the snake's head touches its own body, the game ends. And if he's not mistaken, that should be its only weakness. With that in mind, he steps in front of the snake again to draw its attention. The snake begins chasing him, and he runs toward its body, and with everything set up, now all that remains is to see whether this will really work. The snake prepares to bite him again, but the protagonist jumps, making the snake bite itself. He realizes that his idea was correct, and that this really is the weakness the snake has. However, that weakness was patched by the brain, and because of that, everything returns to square one. But it also indirectly proves that the boss's authority cannot be defeated. And at that point, the players will naturally believe the rule about clearing the game when the number of survivors falls below 3, causing them to fall into a trap, because once they do that, they will inevitably eliminate one another, falling into an unavoidable situation, and that is exactly what the game administrators want to see. But as long as the snake's protection mechanism can be solved, it should be defeated. However, someone needs to distract the snake, and then an external force must make the snake's head touch its own body. He looks at Yukai and thinks that he was responsible for his near death, but at least now he has manpower. Yukai's partners say that the protagonist disappeared, and Yukai tells them to keep watching to the left and the right. He explains that the 3 of them need to hide there, because the rules also say that as long as 3 people remain, they can clear the game, which means they do not need to stir up any more trouble. The subordinates say that their boss really came up with a brilliant idea, and besides, the protagonist showed some skill and might even be able to eliminate that boss. Yukai thinks that if the protagonist really can do that, then it would save them a lot of trouble since they would simply win by default. Chen appears beside them and asks if they really think they will win by default, and questions whether they are acting as if he does not exist. With terrifying speed, the protagonist appears in front of them and grabs Yukai by the neck. Chen says that he is choosing him not to move, otherwise if he accidentally lets him go, he might leave the game earlier than expected. Yukai tries to persuade the protagonist, calling him friend and saying they need to talk things over, because he admits that what he did before was unethical, but in that situation they need to unite. Chen tightens his grip around his neck even more and lifts him off the ground, saying that eliminating him first and then joining up with the others is not impossible. Yukai keeps begging for his life, saying that he acted the wrong way. One of his subordinates calls the protagonist a bastard, shouting for him to let go of the boss and tries to attack him, but Chen throws Yukai into the young man with such force that the moment they hit the wall, the young man loses his life. Yukai gets angry and tries to insult the protagonist, but Chen cuts him off and slams him to the ground, stepping on him, and explains that he has a plan, and if it succeeds, it should solve the problem of that boss. But a bait is needed to draw the snake's attention, and to show how fair a person he is, the protagonist asks Yukai to choose between betting on his idea or being eliminated right there, because there is not much time left and he had better hurry up. Yukai shouts that he will do whatever is necessary, but thinks that a hero does not suffer immediate losses, and that after that level he will have another chance to take revenge. The protagonist lets him go, saying that he must do exactly as he is told, because if he notices any funny business, he will not mind eliminating him and then dealing with the boss afterward. Yukai simply accepts everything that was said, but points out that the protagonist had better really be capable of handling that beast. He walks away in irritation, and his subordinate asks if they really should trust the protagonist and serve as bait, because that job seems to have a 1 in a million chance of survival, and they already lost one member, so they cannot be the bait. But Yukai starts laughing and asks who said that he would be the bait. He goes over to the group of people and tells them that if they do not want to be eliminated there, they need to lure that snake over to him, because he has already figured out how to deal with it. The young man who had been frightened from the beginning refuses, saying that beast is not something they can deal with. The player standing beside him agrees and says that if Yukai wants to go, he can go by himself and not drag everyone else along. Yukai walks over to the samurai-haired guy and kicks him into the middle of the game area. The man trembles in pain, unable to move, and the snake goes over to him and eliminates him. Yukai shouts that he was very polite to them and asks if they really believe he will not eliminate them all and tells them to do the same. Everyone tries to leave, but he grabs a woman, saying that she has to stay. She asks what more he wants because she already did everything he asked. He grabs her by the body, saying that he is giving her a way out and that she needs to follow him from now on, and that when everyone else is eliminated, the three of them can clear the game successfully. Or if she prefers, she can also become the boss's dinner together with the other useless people. Another woman and the frightened young man try to run from the snake, but the young man is also eliminated. Seeing that, the woman becomes completely terrified and realizes she has no choice, eventually agreeing with him, saying that as long as he does not get her eliminated, she will do anything. The other subordinate asks his boss whether this will really work because that woman will not last long and will also soon be eliminated. Yokai looks at the woman beside him and says that they could have a nice trip because if they are not eliminated, then how will he reduce the number of survivors since he cannot be eliminated there because he still has blessings to enjoy in the future. He looks at the protagonist thinking that the kid humiliated him just now, so he must be eliminated. The snake starts heading toward them, and Yukai says that this is the perfect moment and that they can pretend to cooperate while waiting for an opportunity to eliminate him afterward. He runs over to the protagonist saying that they managed to lure the beast over and asking what they should do. But the protagonist was analyzing the whole situation and thinks that that useless man did nothing but evil, and if there is a chance, it is better to eliminate him as well, since he is an unstable factor, otherwise it will be hard to guarantee that he will not cause trouble. The protagonist pretends to believe him and says that as long as the snake's head hits its own body, the game will end. Yukai shouts that this is nonsense, because he had already tested that while he was being chased, and that snake has a protection mechanism, and if its head touches its tail, it will immediately dodge and avoid contact because if it were that simple, that kid would have done it already. But Chen appears behind him and kicks him, telling him to stop the nonsense and do it immediately. They continue running from the snake, trying to lead it toward its own body, and the protagonist, with his astonishing speed, kept circling them. The woman with them screams that she cannot run anymore and begs Yukai to help her, but he only shouts for her to jump to the inner side where it is safer. The three of them jump to the inside and the snake turns toward the protagonist. Yukai smiles and says that the chance is right there, because the protagonist was nothing more than an idiot barking orders at everyone, and now he will be eliminated. But Chen releases his strength again and attacks the snake with everything he has, leaving everyone stunned. The kick was so strong that it changed the snake's direction, sending it straight toward Yukai. He's horrified and asks how that is possible. He manages to move a little to the side, but his arm is torn off, and because of that, the snake bites itself, cutting off part of its own body. The subordinate runs to his boss and asks whether he is all right. Yukai, in terrible pain, tells the protagonist not to think this is over because he will remember this debt. The game congratulates the players for injuring the boss of the Surrounded by Snakes game instance, and the hidden achievement Snake Hunter has been unlocked. The player's level rises to 3, granting 6 free allocation points. But the protagonist is surprised to see that the snake was only injured because it should have been eliminated by that blow, so he wonders why it was only wounded. He looks at the snake and realizes that perhaps it really is not dead. Rabbit appears, congratulating everyone on successfully clearing that game instance, and all surviving players receive corresponding experience and a cash reward. In addition, the other players also receive 3 attribute points to allocate freely, and the MVP player gains an additional lottery draw. Specific settlement matters will be handled after the end of the game. She also points out that other players can view their attribute panels for details, but she will not go into that there. Yukai's arm grows back, and the blonde woman notices that she also leveled up, and that is great because now she is finally not completely defenseless. Yukai's subordinate is amazed by the status panel and feels unsure about how he should allocate his 3 extra experience points. Yukai realizes that his arm returned 100% to normal, which shows that Heaven has not abandoned him yet, because when a level increases, negative physical states are also reset to their original condition. Rabbit walks back and forth, saying that now they will follow the principle of the minority obeying the majority as decided by the players, and asks if they would like to activate the hidden mission. And if the number of people present falls to 3 or less, the hidden mission will be forcibly activated. She walks over to the protagonist and looks directly into his eyes, saying that this is a special reminder, because once the hidden mission is activated, it cannot be cancelled. And if they manage to complete it, all surviving players will awaken a random ability, in addition to generous rewards. Moreover, the rewards are unique, meaning that if they lose that chance, they will not get another one, so they should seize that opportunity. She stresses that the 1-minute countdown will begin immediately, so they need to decide. Yukai was already eager to accept the mission, because he did not expect to be able to acquire an ability directly, since he had heard that players with abilities and players without abilities are incomparable. The protagonist realizes that Rabbit said that 4 survivors do not meet the conditions to activate the hidden mission, which means that the so-called hidden mission and the trap rule are actually the same thing. However, he does not know why they need to go so far as to create a trap rule to lure players into a hidden mission, unless the system's purpose is to lure players to their own deaths. And if a player is eliminated in the game, they will also be eliminated in real life by the helmet's powerful electric current, which shows that no one cares whether the players live or die, since they are being lured into participating in their own deaths in a hidden instance with greater risk, thus generating more traffic, because that is the true objective. That means the safest choice at that moment is not to do everything the higher-ups want. The protagonist says that he does not agree to proceed with the hidden mission. The woman points out that she does not want to stay in that place that kills people, as if it were nothing for even 1 more second. So she also opposes the mission. The subordinate tells his boss that the money they earned from the current mission is already enough for them to spend for a while, and besides, it is too dangerous to continue there, so they need to leave. Rabbit looks at them and asks if they are really deciding that, saying that it is a pity and that they should think carefully, since the rewards for clearing the hidden instance are very generous. Not only experience, but also items and abilities, and those game items are readily available even outside the game, able to generate a great deal of money and prestige. The protagonist interrupts the referee, telling her not to say anything else, because they already refuse to activate the hidden mission. Rabbit takes a deep breath, saying that unfortunately the protagonist is right, and if that is the case, with 4 surviving players and 3 refusing to activate the hidden mission, she announces that the game ends there. Yukai, obsessed with gaining more power, refuses to accept that, saying that it cannot end that way because if he had abilities like the protagonist, he could be just as arrogant. And if he had abilities, none of that would have happened. He grabs his friend and tells him to go in peace, promising to take care of his family, and eliminates him right there. The girl is shocked and terrified by that. The game notifies them that only 3 players are now detected as survivors. Therefore, the hidden mission is active. The protagonist is also surprised because he did not expect that beast to eliminate his own friend just to forcibly activate the mission. The entire place begins to shake and things start breaking apart. Countless snakes begin to appear from every side. Rabbit says that 3 surviving players meeting the conditions for the hidden mission have been detected. She explains that everyone must survive for 10 minutes, and the surviving players will receive extra rewards after the mission ends and that the countdown will begin immediately. She mocks the protagonist, saying that he is a sweetheart, but apparently they did not share the same opinion, and she truly thought that hidden mission would not be activated that time. But in the end, it all turned out very interesting because there are always humans who, driven by greed, corner themselves into dead ends, constantly squeezing their own room for survival until they bury themselves completely. The ground begins to tremble, and Yukai says that he only needs to last another 10 minutes, because after that, he will have nothing left to fear from anyone. The protagonist thinks that things have already reached a point where he can no longer just stall, because with those 2 giant snakes combined at the same time, even with full health, it would not be enough to face them. Suddenly, some snakes begin attacking other snakes, and the protagonist notices something strange, wondering what is going on, because those snakes are not splitting apart, and perhaps the so-called protection mechanism only applies to each snake itself. And if 2 snakes collide, then the devouring rule takes priority. And if he is not mistaken, the hidden mission is simply an extension of the original game, and the rules must be universal. So as long as he can eliminate the 2 beasts, he will be able to solve the problem. He changes his points to strength and thinks that at that moment he must find a way to make the 2 bosses collide, because this is his last chance. Yukai grabs the woman by the arm and thinks that he needs to survive for 10 minutes no matter what, and if necessary, he has to use that woman as a shield. He changes his points to agility. But the woman changes her 3 points to strength and pushes Yukai toward the snakes, saying that he is scum and deserves to be eliminated from the world. Yukai curses at her, asking how she dared to betray him because he eliminated his own subordinate to activate that hidden mission. So how could he be the one eliminated there? She asks what kind of betrayal he is talking about and tells him not to think she does not know what kind of person he really is, because he eliminated his own subordinate, so how could he possibly spare her life? Yukai grabs her leg, saying that he does not want to be eliminated and begging her to save him, promising to give her money once they get out of there. She kicks him, telling him to die alone. Yukai keeps holding on to her and manages to pull her down to the floor, saying that he calculated everything, but never imagined he would fall because of her. And because of that, they should be eliminated together. Unfortunately, he manages to drag her into the snakes along with him. Because of that, only the protagonist remains alive, becoming the target of all the snakes. He thinks that to stay protected from that swarm, there is only one safe place. Exactly there. He stops running and jumps into the mouth of one of the snakes, but notices that this time, the bite force was much stronger. Although luckily he had the attribute points gained from the upgrade, otherwise he really would not have been able to endure it. The two snakes begin moving in the same direction, and the protagonist shouts that this is exactly what he wants because success or failure rests on a single move. As soon as the two snakes get as close as possible, he jumps, thinking that now it is life or death. The snakes attack each other, and because of that, both are eliminated, making the protagonist's plan succeed. The game informs him that the system has detected that the game surrounded by snakes was successfully completed, and the hidden mission was also cleared. Chen became the MVP of that game. Because of that, his level was raised to 8, and he currently has 10 free attribute points, in addition to having obtained a skill selection opportunity. His administrator authority was also upgraded, and a new authority was obtained: code duplication. With that, he can replicate any game code from a deceased individual within 30 minutes and integrate it for personal use. However, the level of the summoned code will remain at the same level as the user himself. The protagonist is surprised to discover that he obtained code duplication because he truly did not expect the system authority to also increase with level, which means that now he can duplicate the code of all deceased NPCs. The system asks whether he would like to duplicate Snake, and he thinks there is no need to think too much about it. He should simply duplicate it. He confirms in the system that he will duplicate the Snake's code. The system congratulates the host for acquiring ownership of the Snake code, and because of that, it has been added to the system backpack and can be summoned at any time. He thinks that with this change, he will have an excellent additional helper in the future. Rabbit congratulates the protagonist for being the only one who qualified in that game. She says that she will be the Supreme God's representative to collect the protagonist's information and upload it to the database, and that if in the future he continues to show exceptional performance, he will receive substantial additional rewards. She asks whether he would like to accept that reward. Chen thinks that apparently this is how they select players who can obtain artificial intelligence and then monitor them. And if the higher-ups consider those people a threat, it is hard to guarantee that they will not be eliminated. He looks at her and thinks that for a moment he had been fooled, but those system girls, simply put, are avatars of the artificial intelligence itself inside the game, and each of them holds a fraction of the AI's authority. Although the amount is extremely small, if he can accumulate them by hunting the system girls, he will be able to obtain artificial intelligence authority inside the game. Rabbit calls the protagonist's attention, asking if he is listening or if he went offline. Chen simply orders the snake to devour Rabbit. She is terrified and falls to the ground, saying that he is cheating, but the snake manages to eliminate her, and the system appears saying that he acquired the unique authority of AI God 0.1%. The protagonist thinks that being able to wish for something and obtain it is the goal in the future, so he must hunt as many of those artificial intelligence avatars as possible. However, he needs to do that in an extremely secretive way so he will not be detected by the higher-ups, but for now, it is time to go back. He removes the helmet and breathes heavily, frightened, asking himself if he really managed to come back alive, and now he understands what his sister was going through. He picks up his phone and notices that there were 2 messages. The messages said that player Chen completed the beginner instance and the hidden mission, and because of that, he received 200,000 yuan in live stream tipping rewards. The protagonist is somewhat pleased by that because 200,000 is an amount ordinary people might not save in many years. But in the game, as long as one stays alive, it is easy to make money, so it is no wonder so many people join it. He tries to call his sister but cannot reach her, and lies down on the bed, saying that he is still unlucky, wondering where she ended up. He keeps blaming himself because if he had not been so obsessed back then, and after strongly opposing the use of artificial intelligence for such games, offended the higher-ups, he would not have been locked up by those bastards. And besides losing his job, he also suffered a huge amount of financial losses, which forced his sister to enter the game to make money and clean up his mess. Thinking about that leaves him even more stressed. He gets up, saying that ever since she left a little money behind, there has been no further trace of his sister, and the only known clue is that she was active in the game. He gets ready to take a shower and thinks to himself that no matter what he needs to do, whom he must face, or where she is, he will find her, because this time it is his turn to protect his family. In a bar, some people were gathered, and the announcement about the game appears, saying that they will broadcast match number 264 live. They are impressed to see that the protagonist is very interesting since he managed to identify the snake's weakness at the beginning of the game, so he must have researched a lot before entering. Tian Quan, level 25, captain of Team Pojin, starts laughing, saying that that kid has a fierce streak in his chest, and that if he had the chance to have him on the team, it would not be a bad thing at all. Fei Ying, level 23, vice captain of Team Pojun, is not so impressed, saying that it was only a beginner level and that if those people had been able to cooperate and work together against external threats, perhaps no one would have been eliminated. But unfortunately, in a beginner field with an average elimination rate of 40%, they managed to reach almost total annihilation. So all they can say is that the overall quality of that batch of players is very low, and players of that level are not qualified to be their teammates. Tian Quan is surprised and begins laughing, saying that this is just like her, known as the nightmare of novices, with players still that fragile, and asks if they should not lower their standards a little, because if this keeps up, the team BMPA will not be able to recruit anyone. But she refuses, saying that quality must prevail above everything, especially quantity. After taking a shower, the protagonist steps out and notices that his phone is ringing. As soon as he answers, he asks who it is, and the voice on the other side says that he has news about the person Chen is looking for. The protagonist asks what he just said, but the voice replies that 3 days ago she appeared on the MVP ranking board of a certain game. However, the information costs 50,000, and as soon as the money is transferred, he will send the details. The two begin talking through the messaging app. The bounty hunter says that he accepted the protagonist's friend request and now he needs to transfer the money. Without a second thought, he sends the amount and the bounty hunter sends the information, saying that it is in District 39 ranking Find the Difference. Chen becomes excited and thinks that apparently he will have to try his luck in District 39. Although the Find the Difference game disappears after being completed, he cannot miss the opportunity to follow that clue. He puts on the helmet, asking his sister to wait just a little longer because he is going to find her. He is taken into the game, and as soon as he arrives, the system welcomes him, saying that he completed the initial level and can now freely choose game instances, and that according to the agreement, he may play the next game within 7 days, and failure to comply with that recommendation will result in heavy fines, and the company reserves the right to take coercive measures. The protagonist simply destroys the message in front of him, asking what kind of tyrannical clause that is, because he needs to participate in the game and create value or pay an enormous sum to buy back his own share. And apparently they lose absolutely nothing, but in any case, he is not in the mood to deal with that now, since the most important thing at that moment is to find his sister and regain control of the artificial intelligence. He opens his status panel. Currently, his strength is at level 14, agility at 10, and both vigor and intelligence at 8. In addition, he also has 10 points to reallocate into any of those stats. He begins analyzing the situation because, judging from his previous experience, although combat power is not the only factor in clearing a game, it still greatly increases the chances of survival. Therefore, strength, vigor, and agility are the attributes that should be prioritized at that moment. As for intelligence, which symbolizes mana, it is not that important. With the 10 additional points, he decides to put 6 into strength, raising it to level 20, and 4 into agility, leaving it at 14. He feels the energy inside his body changing and his strength increasing exponentially. However, when he looks at the panel again, he notices that he has a skill slot he had almost forgotten, but after completing the last level, he had the chance to acquire a skill. And this is the perfect moment to use it because before entering the game, he must strengthen his total power as much as possible. He focuses and tells the system to begin the skill draw. A huge roulette wheel appears in front of him and starts spinning. A few seconds later, it stops, and the system congratulates him for obtaining the skill Invisible Wings. After use, the player can gain 1 minute of time in the air with a cooldown of 10 minutes. The protagonist thinks that although that ability is not high level, if it is used well, it can still have miraculous effects in critical moments. With everything ready, he thinks that there is no more time to lose. So he decides to take a look at Ranking Hall D. But before he can enter, someone approaches and asks if he is a newly promoted player. The protagonist asks how he can help, and the young man starts smiling, saying not to take it the wrong way because he is also new, but he has already managed to clear 2 games, and he would like to know if Chen is interested in joining him for adventures. He points out that the protagonist does not need to worry, since his target is an E-rank instance, and there will not be much danger. Chen apologizes, but explains that he intends to go to a D-rank instance, so he cannot join anyone. The young man is shocked, asking him to think it over, and questioning how a novice intends to challenge a D-rank instance, because that is extremely reckless, and he runs a serious risk of being eliminated. The protagonist reaches the door, and the system asks him to confirm whether he wishes to enter Ranking Hall D. However, once selected, it cannot be cancelled. Determined and knowing what he needs to do, he confirms, saying that he wants to go to Ranking D and that his target is District 39. The man keeps staring at the protagonist inside the elevator, thinking that guy must be crazy. As soon as he enters District 39, the required number of people is reached. Together with him are 4 more people. Xia Shiyu, level 13 with 3 completed games, Zhang Tianba, level 16 with a total of 5 completed games, Gu Qiang, level 11 with 4 completed games, and Shu Tian, level 14, also with 5 completed games. The system girl appears and greets everyone, welcoming them to the game Heavenly Thunder, Earthly Fire. She introduces herself as Little Ant and says that she will explain the rules of the game. She says that to make things simpler and more direct, she will go straight to the point, emphasizing that the entire area where they are standing is a minefield. In addition, there are 30 landmines buried throughout the area, and they need to find them all or detonate them, and as long as either one of those conditions is achieved, it will count as a successful completion of the level. One of the people asks if it is not too simple because it is only a minefield, and as long as they can find the mines, they can clear it. Another person says that he does not believe it is that simple. Little Ant points out that in fact, it is not that simple, because within every 5-minute countdown, at least one player must perform an exploration, and if anyone violates that rule, the entire team will be punished. If no player explores the map within the time limit, a landmine will be detonated at random until all of them are activated. However, to help everyone clear the level, the instance also left behind a glimmer of hope. Each exploration has a chance of revealing various support items beneath the squares, so they can make good use of all the equipment. She walks to the edge of the board and wishes all the players excellent performance, then jumps down from above, saying that she truly hopes that the next time she appears, everyone will still be alive. A young man with glasses says that it does not seem very difficult because it is just a game of Minesweeper, and as long as they follow the corresponding logic, clearing it is only a matter of time. A woman responds that later they can try to follow logic, but the first exploration is basically Russian roulette, since no one knows whether they might suddenly step on a landmine. Chen thinks that something about it is strange, because although what the woman said seems correct, it makes no sense for a D-rank instance to be that simple, which makes him wonder whether he entered the wrong place. However, the discussion quickly shifts direction, and they begin questioning the fact that there is a player there who had only just come out of the beginner level, because each of them has already cleared at least 2 or more instances. So why is that kid there, able to drag them down? That means that piece of trash is simply a ticking time bomb, and his threat is probably no smaller than the landmines. Tianba asks everyone to calm down and stop arguing because he has an idea. He says that everyone must have heard the rules, and in that case, no one can act independently, so they will decide the order by drawing lots. And whoever is selected must move forward, and anyone who dares to violate that will be harming everyone. So he cannot be blamed if it becomes necessary to eliminate that individual in order to protect the group, because that way, even if the protagonist is just a novice, he will not drag the team down. As for the rest, it depends entirely on each person's capability. After explaining his idea, he asks who is in favor and who is against it. Shu Tian says that everyone should already have heard of the tyrant Bree of Z City, because it is the same person. Chang says that if anyone has any objections, they can go to the side and fight to settle it. Otherwise, everyone should raise their hands immediately. The protagonist ends up agreeing, even though he thinks that guy is acting in an arbitrary and dictatorial manner. Even so, this is the best option for now. Otherwise, everyone would be confused and the whole thing would turn into a mess, which would only cause more trouble. Tianba says that to prevent people from suspecting him, they will use the system's built-in lottery function. That way, everyone accepts fate and no one can try to cheat. But in truth, Tianba thinks that everyone there is nothing but a bunch of idiots, because his ability is Hand of Fortune theft, and for a game based on luck, he can handle everything easily. And it was not for nothing that he bought that internal information for a high price on the black market. Otherwise, he would have been reluctant to use that precious ability, which can only be used 3 times in total. As soon as he performs the draw, he starts laughing, saying that he did not disappoint anyone because he drew number 1. And since that is the case, he will assume the lead and open the way for everyone. A blonde young man says that he does not believe that, because it is too much of a coincidence that he drew the first number, and asks if it is possible that that guy is absolutely confident in the safety of the first choice. The girl beside him says that it is fine and tells him to stop talking, because the fewer problems the better, since he cannot beat them, so he should not make himself a target again either. Besides, that is a system mechanism, so she believes there is no possibility that they are being deceived. Tianba chooses where he wants to start, is teleported down, and stands on number 1. He looks up and apologizes, saying that apparently his luck is not very good, and asks who is next to proceed. The woman is a little frightened because there are still large safe areas that have not been opened, and just walking randomly is too risky. She looks back asking if anyone is willing to switch turns with her, but the other woman tells her not even to think about it because that situation is a life or death gamble, and with bad luck she could end up dying, so there is no possibility of anyone trading places with her. Chiang tells her to be sensible and move already so they do not waste time. Still frightened, the woman says she understands and asks everyone to stop rushing her. Suddenly, a system screen appears for the protagonist saying that he possesses authority of 0.1%. He is surprised to realize that those are hidden details of the instance, and that apparently even his low percentage of artificial intelligence authority can be useful. And if he can recover more information about the instance, the difficulty of that game will be greatly reduced. But as soon as he tries to advance, a message appears saying that visualization failed because he does not possess sufficient permissions. He thinks that was only to be expected, because it would not be that simple, and apparently for now, all that remains is to analyze the only available information. He begins reflecting on the fact that 1, 1, and 2, 2 switched places, and realizes that it is an XP system watermark, so it could be that he decides to switch places with the woman. She asks whether he is really serious, because once he takes on that responsibility, he cannot back out afterward. The protagonist says that it is fine and takes responsibility for making the second move, telling her to hurry up. Chiang thinks that this is just what one would expect from a novice, because he is still thinking about how to win over girls, so they need to remember to stay away from him in the future so they will not be dragged down. Tianba, on the other hand, finds the protagonist very interesting, because the reason he himself dared to take the first step was that he bought information at a high price on the black market. But Chen is different because he is so confident that Tianba starts wondering whether he also possesses some privileged information. Chen looks downward and thinks that earlier there was an XP system watermark on the panel, and that must mean that this instance is an evolution of the XP version of Minesweeper. Unfortunately, he is already quite familiar with that game. He remembers when he was teaching his sister how to play, saying that the rules are the same, since it is one step at a time, and if she wins, then he can order takeout, but if she loses, she will have to cook at home. Can gets a little pouty, saying that he is being too bossy since he has already beaten her countless times at Minesweeper. The protagonist says that it is fine and that he will accept a small loss and let her go first because that is a computer with the XP system, and the first step in Minesweeper is absolutely safe. He asks if that is fairer now. Can becomes happy and hugs her brother with a smile on her face, saying that he has always been the best to her. With everything settled, he says that now there is no turning back, and if she loses, she will have to cook. Because of the memories that will not leave his head, he promises once again that he will find her at all costs. He analyzes that instance because it is based on the XP system's Minesweeper. Tianba is standing on 2-2, which should originally have been a landmine, but XP Minesweeper has a first-step protection rule, so the mine was not detonated, but moved to the upper left corner position, 1-1. This is also the reason why the system requested that 2-2 and 1-1 switch positions. So, obviously 1-1 must be a mine, and the number Tianba revealed is 1, so all the squares around him, except 1-1, are safe. And even if he had tried to meticulously obtain the first position, he probably got the instance information through other channels. The 10-second countdown appears and people tell him to move already, asking if he was not the arrogant one, but apparently he is playing the hero to save the damsel and is now scared. The woman who had switched positions with the protagonist asks everyone not to misunderstand because he switched with her willingly, and she is not familiar with him. Chen smiles and chooses his position, appearing next to Tianba and revealing several bombs. Tianba is impressed. The system congratulates the protagonist several times for obtaining a small life position, and also several times for obtaining the small speed position, in addition to obtaining the strange capsule. People cannot believe it and ask if he guessed it through pure luck. The woman who had been scared before now starts complaining, saying that she should not have switched with him, because all of that should have been hers. Tianba looks at Chen, saying that he is very good. This is very good because his analogy was correct, and apparently as long as they follow the rules of the traditional Minesweeper game, they will be able to proceed normally. However, that is a rank D instance, so there must probably be hidden rules, just like in the snake game, so he must not be careless at all. Besides that, he knows Tianba made a huge effort to obtain the first position, so it is clear that he got first-hand information through other channels. On top of that, his acting is ridiculous and clumsy, so he can see right through the hypocrisy. Tianba touches the protagonist's shoulder, saying that he made an excellent move, and even though he is a newcomer, he has meticulous and precise thinking, so he will have a great future. But Tianba was actually irritated because he was thinking that the protagonist definitely also had insider information and should have been a little wiser and taken the second step by himself, since those items are all valuable and can even be used to save lives at critical moments. And the protagonist is managing to act easily and decisively. He shouts for the others to move already because if anyone dares to harm everyone, then he will act on behalf of the group. He looks at the protagonist, thinking that he will let him keep acting smug for a little longer, because he will soon find a good opportunity to eliminate him. That way, all the items will fall into his hands. Tianba's group tells him to stay calm because they are on the upper side, so no one will try any funny business. And because of that, the next person will go immediately. A woman in a white dress says that she will be next and will choose right away. She analyzes the board, thinking that that place must be a mine, so she will mark it with a flag. Then the adjacent one definitely is not, so she chooses there. Her thinking was correct, and she got a safe position. The blonde young man simply leaves everything to luck, but he also gets a safe position. Right after that, all the others quickly go and get their safe positions. The woman in white asks why there had been so much confusion, because she had thought that instance would be very difficult, and apparently, it is simply Minesweeper, and it will be a little easier to clear the whole map, but the man in the hat says that she cannot simply say that because that is a very old game. And if a person is not familiar with the rules and how to play, it is extremely easy to make mistakes. The woman ends up agreeing with him. Shiyu, who is standing beside the protagonist, calls him and says that he must have noticed it because that guy, Tianba, definitely cheated with his ability during the drawing. But the protagonist simply ignores it, asking what it has to do with anything, whether he knows or not, because at most, that guy only exploited a loophole in the rules. Shiyu says that may be true, but the protagonist's smug attitude is getting a little annoying. She decides to introduce herself, saying that her name is Shiyu and that she is a game streamer, and apparently he is quite familiar with that game. So she would like to know whether he wants to take care of her while she takes care of him in the future. But the protagonist looks a little confused, asking how she plans to do that since this is a deadly game, where it will be either her or him, and not an ordinary virtual game. Shiyu asks whether he really had to be so harsh with his words, since this is only an attempt to stay together for warmth. And that is a shame, because only in a certain game had there been a girl willing to team up with her. She points out that she's not trying to boast to the protagonist, although she is also a woman. That girl who had been with her was incredibly strong, and it was the first time she had seen such a strong female player. However, she had forgotten to ask her name and only remembers that she was a golden-haired girl, and after that, she never found such a powerful and reliable ally again. Upon hearing that the girl had golden hair, the protagonist becomes alert, thinking that it could be his sister. Because of that, he grabs Shiyu's shoulders tightly, asking whether the girl she had met had long hair, double eyelids, and a mole at the corner of her eye. Shiyu pulls away, telling the protagonist to stop that because he was hurting her. She explains that she did not get to see her that closely, but from what she remembers, she really does look similar to the one he just described. Chen realizes that his sister really is fine. Tianba shouts at the woman in red, asking what she is doing because it is her turn and she must hurry. Still extremely afraid, she asks whether someone could help her, because all the easy choices are gone and the rest really does not seem easy to choose, so she does not know what step to take because there is no way to choose each square. The rest is harder than before, and the smallest mistake could make all of them suffer. Other players tell her to blame fate for her bad luck, because in a game of Minesweeper, luck is also part of strength. The countdown reaches 30 seconds, and the system says that the next player must start the game as quickly as possible, because after the 30-second countdown, a landmine on the field will be detonated at random. Tianba begins to lose control and shouts, asking what they had said during the drawing, because if someone does not follow the rules of the game, that means going against everyone, and if she does not dare choose, then he will help her, and he starts approaching. The woman, completely panicked, simply crouches down and begs for her life, saying that she does not want to be eliminated there and keeps screaming for help. Tianba prepares to grab her, saying that if she is so afraid of death, then he will help. But Shiyu steps in front of him, telling him to wait and not move, and asks why he cannot help her choose, because that does not violate any rule. She looks at the woman, saying that if she trusts her, then she only needs to listen. Shiyu explains that the number under her feet is the number 3, And around the girl in red, 3 landmines have already been marked for her, so the square in front of her definitely is not a landmine, and if she trusts her, she only has to go there. The woman in red becomes extremely grateful, saying that she will listen to her and choose immediately, and thanks her once again. Yu goes to Tianba and asks him to calm down a little, because that girl was only very nervous, and ended up becoming stunned for a moment. The girl in red goes to the square that Yu had indicated to her. As soon as she steps on it, nothing happens, and she shouts her thanks once again, because Yu told the truth, and now she is fine. Yu smiles, saying that it is very good to see that she is fine, but suddenly the color changes and everything turns red, and a bomb signal appears. Everyone is surprised, and the girl in red asks what is happening, because Yu had said there were no landmines. The protagonist shouts for everyone to get away, and the explosion completely destroys the girl's body. The explosion hits a good portion of the board. Yu manages to escape the explosion with her gravity control, and the protagonist uses his invisible wings ability. Tianba and his companions use shields to protect themselves. The other players only try to run as far away as possible, but some of them had been hit by the explosion. The protagonist goes to the edge of the blast, questioning where that landmine had come from. For a moment, he wonders whether it is possible that Yu did that, but he quickly dismisses that idea because that part of the board definitely should not have had a mine, and something unexpected must be happening. The blonde young man with some burn injuries on his body looks at Yu, saying that she was the one who pointed the way, and he really cannot believe that such a well-behaved and beautiful woman could have such a cruel heart. The woman in white agrees with her friend, asking Yu whether she knew that 3 players died because of her, because apparently she is nothing but a murderer. The woman in white keeps shouting and pointing her finger, saying that the number of people has gone down and it will be her turn to figure things out soon, and she does not want that, because Yu eliminated the other players and should be held responsible for it. Yu puts on her headset, telling the woman in white to go ahead already, because the others are already dead, and this is so annoying. She also asks where they all were when that girl was asking for help, and now they are shouting and trying to do something. Besides that, when the woman decided to make the choice, all of them agreed, and now they are saying that her death happened because of the help she tried to give, and apparently the woman in white is simply looking for a scapegoat, plain and simple. She also asks whether they might have missed some important information. The protagonist keeps analyzing the situation and thinks that Yu definitely did not calculate wrong. The problem is probably in a place no one can see, something that may be hidden beneath that minesweeper field, because that place definitely was not supposed to be a mine, which makes him wonder whether he also missed some important information. When he looks back, he notices that the numbers on the minesweeper board are changing. Tianba continues acting like the leader of the situation, and says that that girl is indeed an irresponsible murderer because of what she did, asking whether she really thinks they do not dare deal with her. The others end up getting involved, agreeing with the supposed leader, saying that they need to do something before she does something stupid again, and ends up taking more people down with her. However, Yu was already losing patience and looks at Tianba, telling him to do something already instead of just talking, because her ability is gravity control, and if they really are not afraid of death and want to experience free fall, then they only need to step forward. All of them become frozen, frightened by the situation. The protagonist approaches her and she turns around irritably, asking whether he is there to cause more trouble, but he only asks her to calm down and points to the side, asking everyone to listen to what he has to say. He explains that there must be a moving mine on that minesweeper field, and it can move back and forth across the field and detonate at any moment. The woman in white is a little doubtful, asking what that guy is talking about. Chiang points out that this information is absurd because if such a thing really existed, could that instance still even be considered minesweeper? Tianba finds that information very interesting. The protagonist continues his explanation, saying that if he remembers correctly, the numbers marked there before should have been 3, 3, 3, and 2, but now it changed to 2, 3, 3, and 3, and the mark that had been next to the explosion also disappeared. In other words, the mine that was there moved 1 square to the right, and that is what made that woman blow up directly without any defense. After hearing the explanation, Chiang ends up agreeing with everything the protagonist said because it makes sense. The woman in white also says that the woman in red really was fine when she stepped there the first time. Chen tells Yu that she guided that woman in red to make that move, which shows that she must have noticed that there was a problem with that board a long time ago, so she found a scapegoat to verify it for her. He looks at her and asks what she thinks of his deduction, asking whether she would prefer that he keep talking. Yu is surprised by all of this and asks how the protagonist knows that and what his real purpose is, since he is helping her get out of that situation. Chen asks who said that he is trying to help her because apparently she must have misunderstood. He points out that she still cannot be eliminated because he needs her strength to help him uncover the whole truth. Shiyu starts laughing and asks why she should help him, asking whether it is only because he spoke up for her to protect her. Besides that, she really did not expect a newcomer like him to be so arrogant, because she did not ask for anyone's help, and even without him helping, no one there can do anything to her. Chen releases his killing intent, and with his eyes fixed on Shiyu, he says that she is giving herself too much credit. He steps a little closer and looks directly into her eyes, saying that he is only informing her, not discussing things with her. Shiyu freezes, seeing that the pressure from the protagonist's aura is extremely intense, which makes her wonder whether that boy really is just a level 8 newcomer, because he may be a hidden level specialist fishing among novices. She remembers the reaction the protagonist had when she mentioned the golden-haired woman and thinks that there is no harm in cooperating with him a little. At least she has the information he wants, so he probably will not attack her. She tries to smooth things over, calling the protagonist handsome and saying that there is no need to make things so tense between them, because he helped her, so naturally she should help in return, since she does not want to owe a favor. She explains that her Heavenly Eye ability can only be used 3 times a day, and she has already used it once. Tianba asks the protagonist who could possibly remember the numbers so precisely, since so many had already been revealed. Zutian agrees with his boss, asking whether it is possible that the protagonist interpreted it wrong. Chen explains that he is a programmer who is especially sensitive to numbers, so it is impossible that he made any mistake. Besides that, speaking without any basis makes no sense. Tianba touches the protagonist's shoulder again, saying that it is fine and that his deduction is indeed interesting. But at that moment, they still need to continue the game since they do not have time to verify something that may theoretically not even exist. Chiang keeps acting arrogantly, saying that they have no time, so the protagonist needs to stop causing trouble. Chen takes a deep breath and points forward, telling everyone that it is not difficult to verify whether the landmines move. He says that they saw that square and it is clearly safe, but to be honest, he has a detection ability that can reveal hidden mines around him, though it is limited, and according to his observation, there is indeed a mine nearby. Chen says that the verification method is also very simple, because he only has to step on the square. Shiyu is startled, asking whether the protagonist is serious, but he keeps walking while thinking that the previous mine that caused the explosion took about 0.5 seconds. Therefore, his escape time must be controlled within 0.2 seconds, otherwise he will be affected. He changes his stats to increase his speed. By concentrating his distributed points into agility, he compares himself to a level 20 player. Besides that, with speed potions and health potions, there is a high probability that he can escape the blast radius. The other people begin to move away, thinking that the protagonist really is crazy, and if he wants to be eliminated, he needs to do it alone. As soon as he steps on the square, the bomb is activated and the explosion happens. Once again, people move away as much as possible, creating shields and using their abilities to escape the blast. Shiyu cannot believe that the protagonist would get himself eliminated in such a stupid way, but she is surprised to see that he managed to get away using only his speed. She cannot believe that he is that fast, because even with potions, he should not be able to move that quickly, which makes her believe that that boy definitely hit his true level, because he is at least level 20 or above. Chen thinks that he barely managed to escape because he almost truly got eliminated, and his remaining health is not enough for another attempt. And for safety, he will use a health potion to recover some of his life. Everyone is impressed, seeing that he really was telling the truth and that there are moving mines underground. The woman in white panics, saying that they're simply doomed because even if they knew where the bombs are not, what could they possibly do since they can move freely? Besides that, they cannot see underground, and the mine's path is also impossible to calculate. The instance tells the players to proceed with the next exploration within 30 seconds, because if they do not, another mine will be detonated at random. A blonde young man and the woman in white were completely desperate, saying that it was all over and all of them were doomed to die. Chen analyzes again where the explosion happened, thinking that those mines must have a movement pattern, otherwise the difficulty would be excessively high, and that is not logical enough. Although the movement pattern is important, understanding the reason why the mines move is even more urgent. Then he notices something. He asks whether everyone saw it and points out that in order to clarify that, first they must solve the problem of the mines' movement. Zhu Tian points out that this is what he would normally say. However, the mission is still more urgent, because how can he care about anything else when he is running the risk of death? The protagonist agrees, saying that this is exactly what he was going to say. He says that in order to find the story, all of them must split into 2 groups. One group will complete the system's mission, and the other group will find the mine's trajectory. Zudian says that he chooses the system's mission, and the girl in white points out that those moving mines are invisible and untouchable, and if she is not careful, she will also be blown up. That means she does not want to walk straight into her death, so she also chooses the system's mission. Chen looks at Shi Yu, saying that the others should continue completing the system's mission, and Shi Yu will investigate the issue of the mine's movement with him. He asks whether anyone is against that. Shi Yu agrees, saying that she will carry out the mission with him without any problem. Tianba once again touches the protagonist, asking him to wait a bit, and points out that it is very dangerous for only 2 people to do that, suggesting that Chen take his group with him, because more people means more safety, but the protagonist says that the situation below is unclear and too many people may be counterproductive. He asks Tianba not to worry because if there is any extra gain, he will share it with everyone. Tianba does not like that idea at all because he has the feeling that there is definitely something good down there. And apparently the protagonist probably noticed something, which makes him think that if the protagonist obtains any reward, he may not share it with everyone. Even so, he agrees with the plan, saying that young people nowadays really do have motivation and enthusiasm, so he will stay on the upper side to lead the team and continue the system's mission. He hands a communicator to the protagonist, saying that he should take it because if he encounters any situation down below, he must contact him immediately so he can provide support from above. The protagonist is surprised to see that that guy has a communicator because he did not imagine that someone could have so many good things. Chen accepts it and sets off on his mission. But Tianba's real strategy is actually different. He thinks that the protagonist believes he can play mind games with him, but thinks the protagonist is still too young for that because as long as he finds something good, he can detonate all the mines up there, and by then, the instance will be cleared. So he will have all the rewards and everyone else can be buried there. Shi Yu asks whether Chen really thinks Tianba will help them, because even she can tell that guy is no good, and it would be a miracle if he did not take the opportunity to stab them in the back. The protagonist says that it does not matter, because he never expected that guy to keep his word, and in any case, he does not need that. Shi Yu points out that she does not understand what he's thinking, but asks him to come closer because her gravity ability has a distance limit. He comes a little closer, but she does not think it is enough, and hugs him from behind, making Chen surprised. She tells him not to think too much because she also has no other choice, since her ability is something unique, and if she does not hold on to him, he will simply fall to his death. The protagonist says that the reason does not matter, because they have a mission to complete and tells her to move already. She tells him to get ready and jumps into the hole. While slowly descending through the hole, she says that the place is empty and asks whether they can really find any clue there. The protagonist notices something farther below and tells her to come closer slowly. As soon as they reach the entrance, they step onto the ground and realize that it is a passageway. He says that this is probably the passage the mines use to move, so they must be inside there, and once they enter, they will be able to know the movement pattern. Shi Yu is impressed because she did not expect such passageways to exist and asks whether it is possible that the mines are using those passages to move freely. The protagonist says that he does not know exactly how they move. Shi Yu gets a brilliant idea, saying that perhaps they could be mines with legs, and starts laughing. But she notices something moving behind the wall and becomes frightened. She grabs the protagonist, asking whether he saw that too, because something definitely just happened. Frightened by the situation, she says that the protagonist needs to protect her, because that is not a place like the outside and there is no room for maneuvering. The protagonist looks at her and thinks that, in fact, he had discovered the true nature of the moving mines a long time ago. When he was inspecting the explosion crater, he saw something. The system had appeared before him, saying that copyable code had been detected, called Landmine Soldier Ant, and asked whether he wished to copy it. He thinks that landmine soldier ants are something interesting, and those mines are actually living creatures, which is why they were able to move. He copies the genetic code and the symbol of an ant appears on his hand, waiting for the right moment, because he was going to rely on that. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake and a huge ant appears in front of them, while 2 other ants appear at their backs, blocking every route of escape. Shi Yu is surprised to see that they are ants, because she should have thought of that a long time ago. Chen says that those ants are clearly seeing them as intruders, and if it is an ant swarm, the number will only increase because of the panic. Shi Yu prepares to attack, saying that instead of waiting for death, it is better for them to fight, but the protagonist stops her, asking her not to do that. He questions what she is thinking because if she makes any move that causes the ants to explode, they will all be eliminated together. Not knowing what to do, she asks what they should do from there on. He uses his ability to create a giant ant. He grabs Shi Yu and tells her to crouch down. She is impressed to see that the protagonist can also summon ants and asks what kind of ability his is exactly, because if he can copy everything he sees, that would be extremely powerful. The system's ants approach the protagonist's ant, and apparently they begin to communicate. Chen thinks that this was already to be expected, since ants identify their own species through smell. So, all he has to do is cover his own scent with the scent of the ant he created, making all the others mistake them for their own kind. Shiyu, a little embarrassed, asks if the protagonist can let her go now. He lets her go and apologizes for having done that. Chen walks over to his ant's head and gives it a few slaps, making it release some saliva. He takes some of it and asks Shiyu to spread it over her body, because the ants probably will not bother them anymore. But she is disgusted and says there is no chance she is doing that. Chen starts spreading it over his own body while telling her that she does not have to do anything if she wants to die. Shiyu watches the protagonist spreading that over his body and thinks that, apparently, when applied to the body it makes them disguise themselves as ants, so there is no choice. She will have to endure it no matter how disgusting it is. After spreading it over their bodies, they continue walking, and she is impressed and frightened to see that there are still many ants around. The protagonist points out that something is wrong because there are too many ants there. Shiyu disagrees and explains that this is normal since they are inside the ant's nest. But he asks her to think about it more carefully because the system's rule was to find 30 mines, but now those ants are in a much greater number, possibly reaching 50 or more. Shiyu ends up agreeing with his point of view and asks whether the rules of the game could be false. Chen starts thinking about it and dismisses that possibility because the rules of the game cannot be false, and perhaps there really were 30 landmines when the game began. He asks her to stay close to him because if he is right, the answer is at the end. As soon as they approach the end of the tunnel, he discreetly observes and notices that there is a queen and several worker ants carrying the queen's eggs. The protagonist begins to understand the situation, because in truth, there should only have been 30 at the start of the game, but with the queen there, the longer they take, the more mines there will be. So in order to clear that game, they need to eliminate that hidden boss. Another mission appears in the system, written updated survival mission. The player has detected the central mechanism of heavenly thunder and earthly fire. The upper section also changes, and the system notifies everyone that the mission to destroy the source of thunder, the queen ant, has begun, and the reward is double experience and a random item draw ticket. The MVP's exclusive personal rewards are a grade C weapon, Blade of the Void, with a grade C ability. The protagonist is surprised since in the end it really is a mission update. The red-haired boy and the girl in white ask what a queen ant is, and whether this is still a mine hunt. Besides that, they also ask whether that does not mean they have to fight this source of landmines, and whether they can really win with only what they have. Tianba thinks that the protagonist really did manage to find something good, because he had already been suspicious that a rank D instance would not be so simple. Shiyu is impressed, seeing that they managed to find a hidden boss because she had heard people talk about that before, but never thought she would actually get to find one. Besides that, there are rumors that eliminating a hidden boss gives super generous rewards, and apparently that is true. She looks at the protagonist thinking that he's very strong, so perhaps she should let him fight the boss first, because if it works, then that immense wealth will fall into her lap. Suddenly, Tianba contacts the protagonist through the communicator he had given him, saying that they all saw the system announcement and asking whether he would like help, because with that, they could bring people down below. The protagonist starts laughing and says that apparently he cannot hold himself back so soon, but tells Tianba that he's not in a hurry and can let the bullets fly a little longer. Tianba keeps trying to talk to the protagonist, but the protagonist no longer responds, which makes Tianba think that the boy really is planning to keep all the rewards for himself, and that apparently his greed is very great. Shiyu asks why Chen does not want to let them come down to help, because just the two of them alone might not be able to deal with that. But the truth is that she wanted more cannon fodder to blow open the path, because that way she could fish in calm waters. The protagonist says that, in fact, she is right and only the two of them may not be enough. However, only by staying above can they help from the outside. Suddenly they start hearing a noise approaching, and when they look back, the ants from before were once again coming toward them. Shiyu is frightened, asking how those ants managed to reach them so quickly and whether it is possible that the slime has disappeared. Chen tells her not to panic because his summoned beast is not reacting, which means they are not the targets. And apparently those ants are retreating to defend the queen ant. The protagonist really was right. The ants simply ignored them and went straight to the queen's nest. He says that they need to go in there too, because they will not be in danger until the scent on their bodies disappears completely. Above, Tianba kept trying to communicate with the protagonist, asking him to respond, and makes an offer, saying that they can join forces and, once they eliminate the boss, they will split the reward 70% for Tianba and 30% for Chen. However, he gets no response. Chiang tells his boss that not even a 70-30 split was enough for the protagonist to answer, which makes him wonder whether there really is that much good stuff down below. Zutian says that this is highly likely, otherwise that boy would not risk his life to go solo since they are there to seek wealth. Tianba was already completely irritated with the protagonist, saying that he may even win the rewards, however he needs to stay alive to claim them. And there is no point in the protagonist thinking he can escape just by being below, because the communicator he handed him has a positioning function. Chen was already beside the queen. Shiyu asked what they should do now because apparently they are only going to keep hiding, since the two of them alone cannot eliminate all those ants. The protagonist tells her to be quiet. Meanwhile, above, Tianba takes out his weapon and orders the blonde young man and the woman in white to open the backside. The two refuse, saying that they cannot do that from there. The woman in white asks what Tianba is doing, but he fires a shot upward and points the gun at them, asking what is wrong, and orders them to do exactly as he said. Otherwise, he himself will take both their lives. He thinks that since there is a queen ant, then the moving mines may just be explosive soldier ants, and he needs to verify his hypothesis immediately. The two, frightened, end up agreeing to do what he is telling them. Meanwhile, below, the ants were getting closer and closer to the two of them. Shiyu asks what is going wrong since those ants are becoming more and more agitated. She points out that if the protagonist has a backup plan, he needs to make it happen immediately. But Chen explains that he does not have a backup plan and that they only need to wait for rescue. That makes her even more afraid. Shiyu asks if he has gone crazy because apparently he is waiting for that guy called Tianba to come down there and rescue them. And even if he managed to get there, they would probably become ant food before that. One of the ants tries to touch her leg and frightened, she ends up hitting the ant, making it angry. Shiyu falls into despair, screaming that this time it is all over because they have been discovered and she should never have trusted the protagonist. The ant tries to get closer, but before it can do anything, an explosion happens, drawing the attention of all the ants. The protagonist says that they are already there. Chen lifts part of the queen ant and asks her to get inside, but she asks why she should do that. The protagonist explains that someone stepped on the top of the passage and the soldier ants are going to detonate. The two of them run underneath the queen and a huge explosion occurs. Because of that, one ant falls in the middle of the others, consequently activating all the other ants, causing a gigantic explosion and destroying everything around it. The destruction was so great that even the upper section was hit. Tianba tells his subordinates to protect themselves. However, he does not know what is happening, since the system did not notify anything. Suddenly, they notice movement coming out from the middle of all that smoke. The queen comes out of the hole flying and lets out an ear-piercing scream. The woman in white, who was injured, begs for help because she did not want to be eliminated there, but Tianba is a little frightened because even with that gigantic explosion, the boss had not suffered any damage at all. Besides that, he notices that the protagonist was also alive. He begins firing his weapon, shouting in disbelief that all of this is possible. However, the attacks were basically causing no damage at all, and the queen counterattacks. Sutian jumps to try to save his boss, but Chiang is hit. Tianba becomes worried about his companion, who was asking his boss for help, but the injury was too severe, and little by little he begins to disappear while saying that he wanted to go back home. Tianba tries to run to his companion, but he was simply eliminated before Tianba could do anything. Zutian shouts for his boss to get up immediately because that situation is very dangerous. Tianba, who is already at his limit, starts cursing while releasing his true power because he, who used to be the hunter, never imagined that on that day he would be the prey. Besides that, this is only a rank D instance. However, it cost him dearly. Zutian notices that his boss is losing control and tries to stop the situation, saying that that ability cannot be activated. But Tianba had already lost control and swears to his friend that he will avenge his death no matter the cost. As he transforms into a beast, he lets out a ferocious roar, drawing the boss's attention. Tianba tells Zutian that this is a situation in which he cannot interfere and asks him to find a place to hide. Zutian, frightened by that situation, only asks his boss not to die. Tianba leaps to attack the queen, saying that he will crush her with his own hands. His attack really is powerful and causes great devastation in that place. Meanwhile, underground, Chen was sitting there, just watching. Shiyu asks whether they're going to stay there merely watching until Tianba is eliminated, and then come out and gather the scraps. The protagonist says that this is not the plan, because if they do that, they will not be much better off than they are now, since that boss is not so easy to deal with. And as for when to make a move, they only need to wait a little longer. Tianba was fighting with everything he had to attack the queen. However, no matter how much he attacked until he was gasping, it was useless. The queen remained basically intact and with just a single strike, manage to knock him to the ground, hitting him with a powerful attack. With her wings, she is able to throw countless bombs downward, and Tianba tries to avoid them. But when he looks back, he notices that his other companion was in danger, calling for help. Tianba tries to run to him, asking him to stay safe. At the last second before the explosion, he manages to grab his friend and fall with him, rolling on the ground. Zudian activates his shield to protect both himself and his boss from the explosions. However, the explosions were striking them from all directions, and the shield was not enough to withstand the damage. As soon as the shield breaks, Tianba feels something very strong in his body and begins to lose consciousness, returning to his normal form. Zutian tries to help his boss, asking him to hold on. Tianba tells his companion that normally it is Zutian who protects him, but this time he wanted to be a little selfish and protect him. Zutian only cried, shouting his boss's name. While this was happening, the queen prepared for a new attack and advanced toward them. Tianba asks if this really will be his end, but Chen appears and manages to save the two of them. Shi Yu also comes out of the hole and uses her gravity to push the queen to the ground. She shouts for the protagonist to act immediately because she will not be able to hold her for long. Chen, who had all his points placed into agility to increase his speed, runs as fast as possible and leaps toward the boss. While he is in the air, he asks the system to reset his attribute points, because now it has to be all or nothing, and at the very least, he needs to discover the limit of that boss's defense. He reallocates all his points into strength, raising his strength to 35. He braces himself and charges at the queen, landing a truly powerful punch that even made the ground shatter. Shi Yu asks whether he managed to defeat that monster, but suddenly the queen begins to tremble and gets back up again, throwing both of them away. Chen lost half of his life and takes another healing potion. He thinks that the defense of that boss is really very strong, because he gave it everything he had and basically did no damage at all. Tianba walks over to the protagonist and thanks him for saving both their lives. Even with half his life gone, Chen throws his healing potion to Tianba, who is surprised by that. With a smile on his face, the protagonist says that he really did not expect him to be such a loyal companion and extends his hand, asking what he thinks about joining forces. Tianba takes the potion and asks Chen how they could cooperate together. The protagonist begins to explain the situation. He says that everyone there has already witnessed that the queen has extremely high health, mainly because she can fly. Therefore, the main immediate objective is to bring the queen down to the ground so that they can act more effectively. Tianba points out that saying that is easy, because that boss really is extremely difficult to deal with, and asks exactly how they can bring her down. Shi Yu shouts at them, telling them to stop wasting time, because the queen is about to unleash her final attack. The queen begins to gather an absurd amount of energy, and suddenly, several eggs begin to come out of her body, and before the eggs even reach the ground, ants begin to emerge from inside them, creating an army in front of them. Chen points out that he has an idea, but before he can do anything, he needs Tianba's help, and that is all he can say for the moment. So deciding whether to help or not is a choice only Tianba can make. Tianba assumes that the protagonist is right because they need to eliminate the boss, or the boss will eliminate them. With that, all of them begin to advance. The protagonist reallocates his points into agility and begins to run through the middle of the ants, detonating all of them. Chen uses the communicator to ask Tianba to help him by drawing the queen's attention so that he can find an opening and reach her wings. Tianba says that it is fine and asks him to keep moving forward. Tianba transforms again and Zutian asks him not to do that, but Tianba points out that right now they are not in a moment where he can worry about the consequences, because if he does not do it now, he will not have the chance to do it in the future. The queen begins looking at him and tries to attack him. While Tianba dodges all the attacks, he thinks that the protagonist had better be as fast as possible because, in his transformed state, although strength and agility are greatly increased, the cost is that the limit of his life constantly burns away and eventually reaches the number 1, with the risk of instant death at any moment. The protagonist, who is still advancing, thinks that the queen's advantage is her wings, but that is also her most sensitive and vulnerable point. And if that really is the case, he will use her own methods against her. With the explosions of the ants around him, he uses his ability to copy the genetic code of all of them, until the system warns him that his storage space is insufficient. He realizes that apparently the storage space is not infinite, but everything he managed to obtain so far should be enough to make things difficult for her. He asks Shi Yu whether she can help him get up there. She says that he is very far away, however she will do her best. She concentrates all her energy to launch him upward. The protagonist takes advantage of the momentum and also uses his invisible wings ability to manage to stop in midair above the queen ant. As soon as he reaches the perfect position, he summons his ants, ordering them to cut off the queen's wings. As soon as the wings begin to be damaged, the queen becomes extremely furious, screaming in pain. Chen warns everyone to be careful and dodge as much as possible because that is about to explode. He goes back down and a huge explosion takes place above the queen, completely destroying her wings. The black sphere that was above is affected by the explosion and begins emitting an overheating warning. Suddenly, a second explosion happens. That black sphere could not withstand the extremely high temperature and ended up exploding. Zutian used his shield to protect everyone from that explosion. The queen ant falls to the ground, causing another small explosion. The three of them ask if they succeeded. They keep looking at the queen's body, which was completely burned. The protagonist tells them not to lower their guard because the system has still not announced that they won. Suddenly, something begins moving inside the queen's belly. Another ant comes out from inside the body and they shout for everyone to try to protect themselves. The new form of that game's boss begins attacking, destroying everything around it and throwing everyone away. The protagonist realizes that both the boss's strength and agility have increased, and perhaps this is the final frenzy. Zutian runs to his boss, who had an injury on his back, but he was complaining that that boss is an abomination. Shiyu warns everyone that that monster is approaching. Zutian creates his shield again to try to protect his boss, but the shield is easily broken with a single strike, and Zutian is thrown away. The queen prepares to finish Tianba, but Shiyu goes to her and uses her gravity control to try to hold her for a while. She's happy that she managed to hold the monster for a moment and smiles, saying that there is a small chance. But the queen turns her tail downward and uses it like a propeller to attack Shiyu. She begins falling out of control, but the protagonist manages to catch her. However, she was already completely panicked, with tears in her eyes. She repeats several times that this time it is definitely over. The protagonist looks back, wondering whether a rank D dungeon is really too much for him. However, he remembers that he still has some items he did not use, which he managed to obtain during the first clearing he did on the board, because if he opens them, he will be able to see the glimpse of hope that had been mentioned at the beginning. As soon as he looks at the strange capsule, he sees that it is Myriad Elephant Forest Sprout. After use, it can instantly summon a dense forest that sprouts from the ground. Without thinking twice, the protagonist decides to test whether that thing is truly a mule or a horse. As soon as the seeds fall to the ground, several trees begin to sprout instantly, completely covering the arena. The protagonist thinks that that boss is very strong, and if Tianba fights alone, he definitely will not be able to do anything. The queen looks at the forest and begins cutting down all the trees to try to locate her enemies. However, the forest was very dense, and she was unable to find anything, and because of that, she lets out a terrifying scream. The pressure of the sound alone makes the forest tremble. All four of them were at their limit, and Tianba says that the boss is screaming so loudly that she sounds like a pig being slaughtered. Chen says that he still has 2 healing potions, and they need to split half a bottle for each person. But Tianba says that it is useless, because the third phase of that monster is not something someone at the protagonist's current level can handle. Although the protagonist managed to increase his attributes, he is still level 8. Chen thinks that although Tianba's words were harsh, they are true. He asks what Tianba thinks they should do, because they cannot just sit there and wait to be eliminated. Tianba looks at the protagonist and calls him by name for the first time. He assumes that he will not be able to get out of there, so he would like to make a deal. Tianba explains that he will help the protagonist level up. However, he needs to promise that he will help get Zutian out of there. The protagonist is surprised and asks whether Tianba really said that he would make him level up, wondering whether such items exist. Besides that, he asks how Tianba can guarantee that the protagonist will keep his word, because simply agreeing to the plan is one thing, but actually carrying it out is another. Tianba explains that he has many companions outside, so if the protagonist really wants to screw him over and not keep his word, then he only has to wait, because the moment when he will be turned into minced meat will not take long to come. And as for how he will help him level up, it is an extremely simple process. Tianba offers his life, asking Chen to eliminate him. With that, he will be able to gain 3 to 5 levels. Because Tianba was at level 16 and had cleared 5 dungeons, the current bounty on him was 200,000. And if the protagonist decided to eliminate him, he could gain an additional reward worth 30% of the target's experience points. On top of that, all of Tianba's personal item properties would also pass on to the protagonist. Zutian tries to stop his boss, asking what he is doing, and stressing that he cannot be eliminated there because they need to find another way. Tianba apologizes to his companion but says this is the only way. Even so, he has one last request. He asks Zutian to settle the wages with all the brothers as soon as he gets out of that place. Zutian drops to his knees, begging his boss not to give up on life, saying that he himself is the weakest one there, so if someone has to die, it should be him. Tianba had already made up his mind and tells the men to move quickly, throwing his weapon to the protagonist. Thanks to the system screen that had appeared earlier, the protagonist managed to see that Tianba's name was in red, so he had probably done many evil things before. But Zutian keeps trying to stop it, begging Chen not to judge his boss by the red name, because he definitely is not what the protagonist is imagining. Zutian kneels and begs for his boss's life, explaining that he used to brag a lot about Tianba. However, they had only followed their boss to work as contractors in the city, but the market changed to artificial intelligence robots, and all the brothers lost their jobs. He thought that game might change things, but unfortunately it did not go as planned. Zutian bows even lower, asking the protagonist to think twice about the situation, because all the other brothers outside depend on and trust Tianba. Shiyu watches the scene and thinks that apparently the experiences of those two are not very different from hers. The only real difference is that she trusted the wrong person. In the past, when she lived as a virtual streamer, she had managed to gain millions of fans at her peak, and everything had been going very well. But with the popularization of artificial intelligence, AI streaming became no different from real people, and it could run 24 hours a day and 7 days a week without rest. Even if she managed to come up with a new idea, the AI would learn it, imitate it, and then surpass her in no time. Not long after that, she had no options left. Even the most basic daily life became hard to maintain. And even when she tried to work lower-end jobs, sooner or later she would find out that those jobs had also been taken over by artificial intelligence machines with extremely low operating costs. When she was in the game, her friend Zhao Qian had tried to stab her in the back, asking for forgiveness, but saying that she had to win because that game was not simple, and one of them had to be eliminated for the other to win. Shiyu realized that when profit was on the line, even her best friend, who had been on her team from the beginning, chose to betray her. But fortunately, she was the one who survived in the end. She looks at the current situation, thinking that her whole life she had imagined that everyone inside that game was crazy. But now she has realized that there are also people willing to sacrifice their lives for the people around them, which goes against what she had always believed, that the game was full of lunatics. She looks at the protagonist and thinks that even a strong person like him will survive by following his principles instead of turning into a beast that only knows how to eliminate others. And that makes her wonder whether she should open up a little more and trust the protagonist. The queen approaches quickly, and Tianba shouts that they have no more time and tells Chen to do what has to be done to save the group. The protagonist stands up and points at the weapon, telling Tianba not to worry because he promises that he will keep his word. Zutian keeps trying to save his boss, but Tianba is at peace, knowing he is giving his life for his brothers. He smiles and thanks Chen. The sound of the gunshot echoes through the dense forest, and Zutian's screams can be heard throughout the dungeon. The system appears before the protagonist, saying that he has completed the wanted mission by eliminating the level D bounty player Tianba. He gained 30% of the target's experience and ownership of his backpack, rising from level 8 to level 11 and gaining 30 free allocation points. His strength rose from 14 to level 20. His agility went from 10 to 16, and both intelligence and vigor also increased greatly, rising from level 8 to level 14. On top of that, the system also detected the host's level up to level 10 and updated the version. A few seconds later, the update was complete, and in version 2.0, the host can now control his own attributes. In addition, he can also control the attributes of summoned creatures and can convert attributes between himself and those creatures. The protagonist is surprised because he was not expecting such a huge gain, and now it is his turn to strike back. He gathers with the two survivors and says the situation is too urgent, so he himself will draw the boss's attention. And when he gives the signal, they need to use their abilities to control the queen's wings. Shiyu asks if he really wants to use combined abilities because the boss is too large and her gravity control is clearly not strong enough for that. Zutian agrees with her, saying that his shield can only protect him, but cannot harm anyone. The protagonist stands up and says there is no time to keep explaining, and they just need to listen to his command because this is their last chance and everyone has to give it their all. He asks if the two of them understand. Even though they are a little frightened, they say yes. Chen says that now everything is ready and that the decapitation attack begins now. The three of them charge forward in an all-or-nothing move. As soon as they step out from between the trees, the boss sees them and immediately chases after them. The moment the queen tries to attack, the protagonist uses his invisible wing skill to lift Zutian and throw him onto the boss's head. He shouts for Shiyu to do her best to keep that monster pinned down. As soon as she manages to stabilize the monster on the ground, the protagonist shouts for Zutian to activate his shield. Chen tells Shiyu to switch targets and place all the weight she can onto Zutian. She gathers every bit of strength still left in her body and uses everything at once, making Zutian dramatically heavier. Because of that, the queen cannot remain standing and crashes onto the ground, essentially immobilized. The protagonist says they did a good job, and now the next step is up to him. He activates his snake ability, making it attack the queen. The snake bites the queen's tail, but the protagonist realizes that is still not enough. because the snake's current attributes are not sufficient to crush the Ant Queen. Chen touches the body of his summon and orders the system to transfer all his attribute points to the snake. The system receives the command and begins transferring the protagonist's power to his pet. The snake receives a massive boost in strength, enough to destroy the queen's body. The system appears, congratulating the three of them for successfully clearing the D rank, Dungeon Heavenly Thunder, Earthly Fire, and says that the rewards will be issued immediately. Shiyu helps Zutian get down safely and asks if they really managed to clear that entire dungeon. The system notifies them again, saying the players will be forcibly teleported out in 5 minutes. The three stare at it in disbelief that they actually cleared it, but Shiyu starts celebrating and even cries with happiness, saying they managed to survive yet another challenge. Zutian is also extremely emotional and collapses onto the ground, shouting to his boss and asking if he saw that because they really did it and now he can leave. Chen returns to the ground exhausted and thinks that it is finally over, and fortunately the result is good. However, he wonders if that really was a D-rank dungeon, because it cannot be compared to lower-rank dungeons at all. The system appears again, telling the protagonist that residual data available for replication has been detected, and the source of the data is Tianba. The system asks if he would like to replicate it. He is surprised to see that he obtained that guy's data. The system says the data will be collected within 1 minute. He hesitates, wondering if he really could replicate that man. But in the end, he asks the system to do it. Not long after, the system congratulates the host for successfully replicating the residual data and says that 3 out of 5 parts have now been collected. The protagonist holds Tianba's data in his hands and asks the system to check whether those data can be repaired. The system tells him that only data personally eliminated by the host can be replicated. Previous elimination data will be stored temporarily in the game's recycling station. To repair the data, the host must recover the original data from the recycling station before they can be repaired. The protagonist closes his hand because he had thought he had found a way to revive someone in the game world, but now it all seems like nothing more than foolish hope. On top of that, the recycling station is the artificial intelligence central database, which means that even the slightest contact would trigger the highest level firewall. And at his current stage, his data cluster is no different from almost useless trash. The only usefulness would be to give Tianba a glimpse of hope, because the data were not completely erased, so he might not be killed by the helmet. And if he can recover his data while still alive, maybe he can still wake up. Chen asks the system to retrieve the personal information from the previous round. The system shows the MVP ranking table, and the first place is Can, the protagonist's sister. As soon as he sees her name, he thinks that he finally found her, and that his sister participated heavily in that round of the game. Shiyu approaches the protagonist and asks if he is feeling worthy, but when she sees the MVP ranking table, she points at it and says that really is the girl she met before, and that her name is Can. She explains that the game she had participated in back then was called Spot the Difference. The players had to find the weak point without making eye contact with the boss. If the players made eye contact with the boss, they would be petrified. After tremendous sacrifices, they finally discovered that the boss's weak point was its eyes. As long as they could strike Medusa's eyes accurately, they could deal effective damage. But unfortunately, no one could attack the boss with their eyes closed until she appeared. With her weapon in hand, she stepped forward and faced Medusa without fear, easily dodging the boss's attacks as if it were nothing, then fired one precise shot and destroyed Medusa with a single move. Shiyu says she was lucky enough to meet that girl in the last round. She was incredibly strong, even stronger than the protagonist, so she remembers her clearly. The protagonist is a little confused, because if his companion's explanation is really true, it means his sister is overwhelmingly superior to other people and has extremely high combat power, which leads him to believe she must also be at a very high level. That raises the question of why she is participating in such a low-ranking dungeon, and there are probably no real gains for her in such a low-level match, so maybe it could be a mistake. The protagonist also watches the live broadcast and thinks that, in the replay, the one who eliminated Medusa was a pink-haired girl, and although her face was never shown, combined with the description Shiyu gave, that pink-haired woman should be his sister. The protagonist keeps analyzing that footage until he notices something very strange. In the entire broadcast, there was not a single shot showing that girl's face, which makes him believe the situation is extremely abnormal and that the platform may be intentionally hiding something. He asks the system to help him get Can's footage. As soon as he receives it, he is surprised, because not only do they fail to show her face in any of the recordings, but there is also a strange man beside his sister, whom he has no idea who he is. Shiyu identifies the man and says it was all that annoying guy's fault because of him, she could not even clearly see that girl's level. She says that man seemed like a bodyguard or something like that, because He followed her the whole time and did not let anyone get close, and she was not even able to thank her for the help she received. After hearing that, the protagonist thinks that now things are starting to make sense, because maybe his sister is being controlled by someone. Once again, the protagonist grabs Shiyu by the arms and asks who exactly that man is and what organization he belongs to. The system warns that the dungeon will close in 3 minutes. Chen asks Shiyu to try to remember any other detail, asking what the man's name was and whether there were any other people. While she was thinking about it, Zutian looks at the image and notices that the man's eyes are heterochromatic, one red and one blue, and says that maybe he could be Lu Chenzhou. Shiyu says that maybe that really is the man's name and asks whether Zutian knows him too. Zutian explains that he remembers meeting him in the black market when he went with his boss to buy an item to hide their red names. While they were negotiating, a man approached and said he wanted that tracker. Tianba, irritated, asked what was wrong with everyone that day and turned around, asking whether there was no respect left, but the moment he saw the man behind him, he was frightened. Chenzhou approached and asked Tianba whether he had a problem with that. With a trembling voice, Tianba tried to say yes, but Chenzhou took the tracker from his hand and simply walked away. The shopkeeper told Tianba to forget what had just happened, unless he was tired of living, because that man was not someone Tianba or he could deal with. Zuqian says that to this day he still remembers those eyes, because meeting that gaze was like facing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He adds that his boss had said that man was a cruel figure, and it was better not to get involved with people like him. Otherwise, the target would not even know how he was eliminated. Chen thinks about the name Chenzhou and says to himself that he will not forget it, because if anyone tries to stop him from finding his sister, he will kill them. Whether god or demon, their existence will be erased completely. The countdown to the end of the dungeon begins. Zudian says goodbye to the protagonist, saying he needs to leave because he has to deliver the news of his boss's death to everyone. But if the protagonist ever needs anything in the future, he just has to get in touch. Shiyu also says goodbye and calls the protagonist handsome, saying that if he wants anything else, he just has to call her. Before Zutian disappears completely, the protagonist says Tianba may not be dead and asks him to take good care of his boss because a miracle may happen in the future. Zutian cannot believe what he just heard, but he has no time to ask anything else. There is a laboratory outside the game. Can was tied to a bed. Suddenly, she wakes up and simply bursts through all the restraints and gets off the bed. A man comes over to congratulate her for waking up and completing yet another mission, and says that the people above, who are more important, have been praising her highly. And now, after calculating her results against her debt, only 1/3 remains. She keeps walking and tells him to stop talking nonsense because she only wants to know what the next mission is. The man walks up to her and says that apparently she is very direct and that in fact there is a new mission coming from above. He explains that she must participate in a B-rank mission to eliminate an A-rank player because that person offended the people above and possesses some things they should not have. On top of that, those things cannot be leaked under any circumstances. He adds that if she ruins everything, unfortunately, her pretty face might explode into pieces, and that would be a pity, since she is an S-rank card. She leaves the room saying that she understands everything, and asks the man to tell the big shots above that she will complete the mission. Even so, she says she hopes he will continue to keep his promise and not disturb his life. She enters the training room and starts wondering whether her silly older brother is doing fine without her there to take care of him. Her thoughts begin drifting elsewhere because she misses her brother terribly and wants to see him, but she cannot think about those things right now, because only when the debt is paid will her older brother no longer be hunted by those men. Then she will be able to live in peace with her older brother, and for that day to come, she must keep moving forward without hesitation. Meanwhile, the protagonist was still inside the closed dungeon. After the mission closed, the data are stored in the recycling station for reuse, and his goal is to try to at least intercept the Ant Queen's data. But the moment he tries, the system flashes red, and he wonders if he failed and if she died shattered to pieces. Suddenly, Little pushes aside a piece of the spider and comes out from inside, saying that she finally managed to get out because she was almost suffocating and is exhausted every single day. On top of that, her back and waist are aching badly after that round, which makes her wonder when she will finally get an easier job. Suddenly, she hears a noise and is startled. The protagonist says he had been wondering the whole time why he had not seen her come out, and now he understands why, because she had been hiding there the entire time. He asks whether that means she was controlling the queen the whole time. Little is frightened and asks why he is still there. The system congratulates the protagonist for clearing the Heavenly Thunder, Earthly Fire Dungeon, and eliminating the Ant Queen, making him the MVP of the match. The system rewards are a C-rank weapon, Void Blade, a disguise, a C-rank skill, and a random item draw ticket, all stored in his inventory. Little says that now all the rewards have already been sent to the protagonist's inventory, and now he needs to hurry up and leave, and stop disturbing the system's rest. But Chen only laughs and snaps his fingers, giving the order to the snake. He says he is not in much of a hurry because first he is going to devour her. He thought that this time he would have to go back empty-handed, but who would have thought that she herself would come out? The snake bites her, and Little asks how that is possible because she is an NPC protected by the system, so how can he hurt her? She keeps refusing to accept it, saying it is not right because he is devouring her data. She struggles to resist because she does not want to be eliminated. She keeps begging, asking him to spare her, because she is willing to surrender to him and calls him master. Because, since he possesses such power, if they join forces, they will surely be able to grow strong and create a new glory. The protagonist starts thinking about it, because it is a good idea, and although devouring her directly could grant him some authority over artificial intelligence, maybe if he managed to subjugate her, she might not be a bad assistant. He grabs her and asks how she can guarantee that she will not betray him. She seizes the chance and tries to explain herself as thoroughly as possible, telling her new master that he does not need to worry because she will clear up all of his concerns. She says that with the system he has, she can merge with him. That way they will become one, and she will fully obey her master's commands. And as for the previous memories she has, she herself will format them so that they will not affect the purity of his system in any way. The protagonist says that really does sound like a great idea. Even so, he tells her that he will give her only one piece of advice and asks her not to have any ulterior motives, because devouring her would take less than a second. Little says she would never dare betray her master. The protagonist tells her to begin. Little tells him not to worry, because following him clearly offers a better future. The system notifies him, saying that a new model is requesting access and being scanned. It is indeed the model integration. The model integration begins, and she becomes excited, thinking that she can feel it, because her body is being filled with her new master's power. A few seconds later, the integration of the new model is complete, and she fully merges with the protagonist. Because of all the emotions she felt, she falls into the palm of Chen's hand with heavy breathing and a sincere gaze, and asks her master whether he now believes that she has no ill intentions. He closes his hand, saying that is enough, and tells her to return to the system. Right after that, the system congratulates him again for obtaining the summonable Ant Queen. He currently has 2 summons, and there are 2 remaining inventory slots. More summon storage slots will be unlocked after the system goes through further updates. He prepares to leave the game thinking that he is finally getting a little closer to his sister. In the middle of the city, inside a bar, a host wishes everyone a good evening, because that night they have the honor of inviting the veteran game critic, Master Lee. He asks everyone to give him a warm welcome. Master Lee thanks everyone. The interviewer also greets him and asks what he thought of the game that just ended. He says that, to tell the truth, the game was very good, and 3 people clearing it was beyond his expectations. And based on his years of observation, he can clearly state that D-rank dungeons lose only to A-rank dungeons in terms of difficulty. The interviewer is surprised and asks Master Lee if he truly believes that D-rank dungeon difficulty really compares to A-rank dungeons. Lee starts smiling and says it is not exactly like that. He explains that the players at that stage have just gone through the baptism of several games. They are more ambitious and arrogant. That state also makes them more likely to stumble, and that is why the mortality rate in D-rank dungeons has always been very high. The interviewer asks what score Master Lee would give that team if he were evaluating them. Lee says he would clearly give them at least a passing grade. However, he shows the protagonist on the screen and says that this score does not belong to the team, but to the commander, who was the protagonist. Because the more dangerous the situation, the more the importance of an excellent commander stands out. And that young man has already begun to show the traits of a qualified commander. Tianquan is happy because he already knew that guy was unusual, but he did not expect him to be that strong, which shows that the boy definitely has the qualifications to join their group. One of the green-haired members agrees with the captain and asks the vice captain what she thinks. Fei Ying keeps the same stance and says she disagrees. She says that there is no denying the protagonist's strength, but as everyone saw, he turned the tide by eliminating a red-named player on his own team in order to level up. Because of that, she cannot trust someone so ruthless, because she would never dare place her back in the hands of a person like that. The 2 of them look at her, and the captain asks whether she means they should wait and see. The other member agrees, because maybe the vice captain is right about that point. The captain eventually gives in. Even so, he says they need to keep an eye on the protagonist, since good talent is extremely rare. The next morning, Chen was asleep until his phone started ringing. He picks up the phone, but he has no idea who is calling. He is surprised to see that it is already 1 in the afternoon because last night he went to bed right after the game ended and completely passed out. The person who called introduces himself, saying that he is Shutian and says the protagonist truly is amazing because his boss is still alive. However, he just does not know when he will wake up, but at least his life was saved. Shutian says there is no need for the protagonist to say anything else because from that point on he will be his true brother. So Chen only has to ask for anything and say what to do, and he will do it without hesitation. Chen thinks there is still some time before the next game begins, and if he wants to obtain information, maybe it would be better to go to the black market. He asks Shutian to take him there. Shutian is a little surprised, but agrees and says that he will send a location so they can meet later. Chen also decides to call that person because he needs the information she has for their collaboration. In front of the Chaoshu restaurant, Shutian and Shiyu were waiting for him. Shutian greets the protagonist, but Chen is a little confused and asks who he is. Shutian starts laughing and says that apparently it worked because his brother failed to recognize him, and maybe it is because he is not wearing the hat, then introduces himself. The protagonist calls him Master and introduces himself as well, but Shutian says he does not need to be so polite and can just call him by his normal name. Chen looks to the side and sees a heavily disguised girl and asks whether she could be Shiyu. She tells him to be quiet and not shout her name in public, because that could be dangerous. Chen says the two of them look very different in real life than they did inside the game. Shutian asks whether he is joking because all of that is for disguise. Shiyu explains that if they do not keep their real appearance different from their in-game appearance, it would be very dangerous. Shutian agrees with her, saying that it is better to be as careful as possible. Suddenly, the restaurant owner steps outside and calls them customers, asking them to come in and try a delicious meal, because his restaurant's signature dishes are poached chicken and spicy chicken, plus a few things that cannot be spoken aloud. Shutian tells the protagonist that this man is a local big shot in the black market, specializing in intelligence. However, he only does business with well-informed people. The poached chicken represents his open business, while the spicy chicken and that other forbidden word refer to underground business. The protagonist realizes that his companion really does know a lot, so he decides to let him handle the communication. Shutian goes up to the boss and says he specially brought a friend to try the cuisine, and that the poached chicken is too bland, so they want the spicy chicken and the other business. The big shot asks whether they prefer the food freshly prepared or aged. Shutian asks the boss whether he is looking down on them, because if they are going to eat, they will eat the most expensive option since they have more than enough money. He orders one aged portion for each of them. The restaurant owner starts laughing and says they are very direct, then tells them to come in because there are private rooms upstairs, and he will have someone lead them there. But before they can enter, the chef places his hand on the door and says that he knows Shutian, but the two friends are new faces. Shutian explains that that is true, and that he is only acting as the intermediary, while the protagonist is the real employer. The restaurant owner looks at the protagonist and eventually agrees, saying that is fine, because if there is an intermediary leading the way, it does not break the rules. Even so, he warns that if anything goes wrong, Shutian will be held responsible for everything. Shiyu asks Shutian whether he can say something they can actually understand, because she is a little lost. He tries to explain, but the chef cuts him off and says that what he means is that she should not look at what she should not look at and should not ask what she should not ask, because that way they will not bring trouble upon themselves. Shutian tells him not to worry, because all of them understand the rules. The moment he opens the door, a massive place appears, leaving both the protagonist and Shiyu stunned. The restaurant owner tells them not to just stand there and to get inside already. As they walk through the place, the protagonist wonders whether that really is the right place, because all kinds of things are being sold, some people are being beaten, and other women are trying to keep men company. Shiyu gets a little nervous seeing that situation and ends up moving even closer to the protagonist, holding onto his shirt. The restaurant owner tells them not to be so frightened, because that is the black market and that is simply how things are there, since the rules of the outside world do not exist in that place. As long as someone has money, they can buy whatever they want. However, it is better to have a bit of strength, because otherwise, in the eyes of other people, he would just be a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered. Chen asks whether it has always been like that. Shutian says yes, because the black market has always been exactly like that, a melting pot of all kinds of people. That place is a truly lawless zone. Even officials, when they go there, have to show some respect to the 10 Yama kings. Those 10 kings are... Shutian looks around and leans in, saying that, actually, it is not that complicated, and to simplify it, they are the bosses of the 10 main organizations in the black market. There are rumors that these individuals all possess extraordinary power and influence. The chef laughs, saying that apparently Shutian really does know a lot. He finally stops and says that there they can obtain answers to anything they want, However, the prerequisite is that they must prove their value so that Mr. Luo believes they are qualified to obtain the information. He presses a button and releases a cage that had been hanging from the ceiling, trapping the three of them inside. The chef explains that they have 1 minute to solve the puzzle and get out of there if they want the answers they seek, or they will be killed on the spot. Su Qian becomes completely furious, kicking the walls and saying that he wants to get out immediately, otherwise, once he gets out, the chef will face a world of pain. From outside, the chef tells him to save his breath because the walls are made of titanium alloy, so there is no way for them to break out. Suddenly, a system screen appears before them. Shi Yu tells them to take a look because that sequence of illegible text seems to be some kind of question, and she asks whether any of them can understand it. The protagonist looks at it and realizes that it may be a sequence. He smiles because apparently those people already know his identity, so they are doing this to test him. Shu Tian asks Chen whether he can figure out what it is. The protagonist says he will do his best. Shi Yu cheers him on and wishes him good luck, but the truth is that both of them are worried about it. Chen simply stays silent, staring at that string of numbers. Shu Tian asks Xiaoyu whether she understands what he is doing, but she says no. Shu Tian starts panicking, saying that this is ridiculous because with so little time, not even a god could solve it. Xiaoyu also starts getting very scared, saying that she should never have come there with them because now she is going to lose her life. Outside, the chef is laughing because Mr. Luo thinks highly of that boy, and even the strongest mathematical genius in the black market would need paper and pen to solve it, while Chen is just standing there staring at it and is probably already intimidated by the massive calculations. The protagonist keeps staring fixedly at the string of numbers passing before him. The 10-second countdown begins. Chen closes his eyes and analyzes every number he observed carefully. He comes to the conclusion that the set of numbers appears chaotic, but in reality the sum of every 3 numbers is the same. As long as he takes 1 number out of every 2, he can form 3 arithmetic progressions. Once the pattern is found, the number of calculations is not that great. Chen laughs and says that they are testing him with a problem of extremely low difficulty, because apparently they are underestimating him. He begins solving the calculations, but only 2 seconds remain and everyone else already thinks it is over. But with only 1 second left, the protagonist says that the answer is 52,914. The box explodes, but all of them remain completely unharmed inside. The chef is impressed, saying that was incredible. Luo appears above on a walkway, saying that boy is quite interesting. The blonde subordinate asks his boss whether that boy really is that capable to be valued so highly. Another subordinate says that the boss clearly has his own reasons for doing that, so all they need to do is follow along, and from what he just saw, that person definitely is not as simple as he looks. A man with a scar on his head says that the protagonist is just an ant, who has not even reached C rank yet, so it makes no sense. Luo tells them it is fine, because he already has a great use for that boy, and calls everyone to go meet him. The 4 of them jump down to the ground. Mr. Luo starts laughing, saying that this was only to be expected from the chief artificial intelligence engineer of the Galaxy Group, and that he knew he had not judged wrongly. Chen stares at him and wonders who that person is, because he has a shocking aura. Chen asks Luo whether they know each other. In the blink of an eye, Luo approaches the protagonist and, with a smile on his face, says that he has heard Engineer Chen's name a long time ago. The boss introduces the protagonist, saying that he is the former Chief Artificial Intelligence Engineer of the Galaxy Group and a great talent in the field of artificial intelligence. Because of that, he can say for certain that without the protagonist, there would be no Galaxy and no Gold game as it exists now. So it is no surprise that he possesses such an astonishing ability, the power to bring back to life those who were eliminated in the games. Chen starts losing control and prepares to act, but Shu Tian steps in front of him, asking them to wait a second, and tells Mr. Luo that the rules of the underworld do not violate any taboo, so he cannot do that there. He tells Chen that Mr. Luo Tian is one of the 10 Yama Kings, and the people around him are not ordinary either. On top of that, they are in enemy territory, so it is better not to burn bridges. Shu Tian says this is the first time he has ever seen such important figures. Besides that, the oppressive aura of that man is definitely no weaker than that of a C-rank player. Hearing that, the protagonist becomes a little confused, wondering whether an increase in game level can also affect a player's aura in the real world. Luo Tian asks whether Shu Tian really has the nerve to talk to him about rules. He says that in that place, his word is the rule. Several other people arrive and surround the entire area. Shi Yu asks Shu Tian to stop talking, or else they will all be eliminated right there. Chen looks at Luo Tian and says that he went through a lot of trouble to have the chef bring them there, and states that he did not do all of that just to show off his power. Luo Tian says that the protagonist truly is smart, and that he likes him very much and enjoys dealing with intelligent people. He pulls something from his pocket and says that he would like to make a deal, because there is something there that the protagonist wants, but he must already know that information will not be given for free. Chen asks what he wants. Luo Tian says that he will give the protagonist 1 week. He needs to reach C rank within at most 1 week, and if he manages to do that, then he can come back there and exchange his resurrection ability for the information, because otherwise there will be no deal. He asks whether the protagonist can do it. The protagonist says that the method Luo Tian mentioned may not be something Luo Tian can actually use, but Luo Tian says that whether he can use it or not, he will find out for himself, and the protagonist only needs to do as he says. After laying out the terms of the deal, he says that the protagonist and his group may leave, because he truly hopes they can meet again within a week. As he leaves, Chen thinks that from that point on, he needs to be even more cautious, because the other party probably only found out that the matter involving Tianba is related to him, and if his control over the system is exposed, that will definitely lead to an even bigger problem. Luo Tian holds an amulet in his hand with the photo of a woman on it. He thinks that the duration of that item has entered its countdown, so he wants to make one final gamble. Shiyu breathes in relief, saying that she was scared to death and her heart is still pounding, so she will never again go wandering around with those two, because it is way too stressful. Sutian says that he also did not expect to meet such a big shot there, but fortunately, the protagonist protected all of them, otherwise they never would have gotten out of there. Chen takes a card from his pocket and says that, in the end, everything that happened that day was because of him, and there is not much he can do to make up for it, so he is handing over that card, because there is some money in it and they can consider it a form of gratitude. Zutian says he is being way too formal and asks the two of them to come closer. He says that they are in the black market and cannot go back empty-handed. He says that he would like to take them to another place managed by a friend of his, and that it is absolutely worth it because it is great. Shiyu pouts and asks how likely it is that he is telling the truth, and whether it is not another king of hell. Shutian starts pushing the two of them along, telling them not to worry, because he is not that powerful and he does not see the king of hell every day. Not long after, they enter a small shop. Shutian calls out for old Li, but nobody answers. He shouts again, asking whether there is anyone alive in there. Suddenly, the cook appears, asking whether they are calling for his soul, because he is not dead yet. Zutian hugs him, saying that he knows very well that he is fine and that he came to bring business, asking him to bring out all the good stuff as quickly as possible. On top of that, he would also like 30 more of those highly explosive big ones that he supplied last time. But the cook refuses, saying that he still has not paid the bill from last time. Sutian starts laughing, because he already knew he would not be able to take advantage of a grumpy old man. He explains that his friend brought money so he can relax, because nobody will cheat him. Sutian tells his friends to take a look and see whether they need anything, because he cannot say too much about old Li's general warehouse, but the merchandise is definitely complete. The cook says that he has finally heard something sensible. On top of that, he has also heard about what happened with Tianba, and because of that, all purchases that day will have a 20% discount. Sutian is happy about that because he is being very considerate and says that he had told them it would be well worth it because that guy is loyal and very generous. Old Li takes them into another room and tells them to have a look. He taps the wall with his ladle and everyone is surprised when they see what is hidden behind it. Sutian runs over to look at everything inside, saying that the grumpy old man had been hiding a treasure. Li introduces Soul Scales, a dagger that can absorb the user's own health to increase attack power. When health falls to 20%, the ultimate ability, Predestined Judgment, deals true damage based on the absorbed and consumed health. It is D rank and costs 5 million. The weapon on the other side is called Times and Hourglass Blade, a katana whose attacks have a chance to slow enemies, reduce their defense, or reduce their attack power, but only one effect can trigger at a time. It is also D rank and costs 4 million. Sky Observer Armor. When attacked, there is a chance to generate a layer called Sky Shield, which absorbs 30% of the next damage received. The active skill can trigger a small-scale lightning storm to fight enemies and increase movement speed by 20%. This armor is D rank and costs 3 million. Sutian asks Old Li to wait a moment and questions whether those things should really be sold in a warehouse because each one is worth millions, and asks whether there is not anything a little more affordable. The grumpy old man says there are cheaper things. He points to the side and says there is an item called Coin of Fate, a special consumable. After use, it can restore the user's health and grant a beneficial bonus, but it can also trigger a penalty mechanism in which the user is struck by lightning, takes damage, and receives a paralysis debuff. It is F rank and costs 100,000. On the other side is the Equipment Upgrade Ticket, a special consumable. It can upgrade a weapon or armor once, and if successful, the weapon or armor will be upgraded by 1 rank, but the success rate is 50%. If it fails, the weapon or armor will be directly damaged and destroyed. It is also F rank and costs 100,000. Shiyu asks whether that thing can really work because it does not seem very reliable. Xiuchen takes out his card and says that he also has some money and offers to help them buy something. Sometime later they leave the shop and the grumpy old man says that it is fine and asks them to take care and come back whenever they want. Shiyu looks at Sutian and says that the protagonist's savings were almost completely drained in that shop, and she feels like the shop owner and Sutian are in on it together, but he asks her to stop talking nonsense and says that God knows very well that a man like him would never do that. The protagonist interrupts the two of them, saying that it is fine, and tells them to keep the items without worry. Although the price was not very favorable, it was still a good deal. Shiyu agrees with him, but even so, she says she feels a little bad that he spent so much money. Sutian looks at the situation and realizes that something crazy is about to happen. He asks Chen whether he is thinking about challenging a C-rank dungeon directly. The protagonist says that is exactly right and explains that he only has 1 week and has no other options. Shiyu becomes worried because she has heard that the survival rate in C-rank dungeons has always been below 30%, so she asks him to be as careful as possible. Sutian tries to calm things down and says that it is not that extreme because his boss used to be C-rank, and even though the competitions were very intense, he always survived in the end. However, only he would win in the end, and back then, that drew the attention of important figures, which is why he became wanted. He says that if Chen is still D-rank, he can sign up for that promotional competition every month, so there is no need to rush. The protagonist tells them not to worry so much, because he is not an idiot, and if things become impossible, he will give up. He thinks that in order to calm his companions, he had to say that, but the truth is that when it comes to his sister, he absolutely cannot joke around, and because of that, he will never give up. During the night inside his house, the protagonist looks at the helmet and remembers his two friends. Shutian had asked him to listen to a little advice from his little brother, asking him not to risk his own life, because the danger of C-class games is nowhere near that simple. Shiyu agrees because she has also heard about it and the mortality rate is extremely high, basically designed to wipe everyone out. However, the protagonist is resolute and extremely confident. He thanks the two of them for their concern, but promises that he will not do anything unless he is sure he can handle it. He puts on the helmet and enters the game again. The system says that the C-class challenge has been unlocked. At present, he can register for the C-class promotional match in 3 days, or choose to give up and continue participating in regular dungeons. However, there is one note: after giving up, there will be a 1-month waiting period, so he needs to choose carefully. He simply presses to register. The protagonist thinks that in that deadly game, who can guarantee survival in every round? The only thing he can do now is use this week to get his body into the best possible condition. He opens his status panel and asks the system to restore his skills. He gains 2 C-class skills and 1 special skill called numerical control. He also asks the system to restore his items. He needs to quickly master all of his skills and items, turning them into his own strength. He asks the system to help him look for dungeons classified as D or below. The system begins listing all available dungeons and finds a total of 2,320 D-class dungeons for him. Among all those dungeons, he notices one called Myriad Realms Proving Ground and becomes curious about what it is. The system notifies him again, saying that there is dungeon number 830 Myriad Realms Proving Ground. System level 2 unlocks the host's exclusive personal dungeon. At present, the system is already level 2 and asks whether he wants to unlock it. Confused, he asks the system what that means. The system begins to explain that, as the name suggests, the host can open exclusive personal dungeons, and completing them grants great rewards. Personal dungeon levels begin at Class E and gradually rise. For every level the host clears, a new level will be unlocked, with no maximum limit. The protagonist thinks that the exclusive dungeon is a separate data model from the main database after a privilege update. Little calls out to her master, saying that she knows about this, and if he allows her to come out, she can explain. He takes her out of the system, and she is happy to see that he finally remembered her. She says that the deduction he just made is correct. The new function has been separated from the main core of the artificial intelligence and has now become an exclusive system for him. She asks whether he wants to try it quickly, because the completion rewards seem much more generous than those of normal dungeons. A portal appears in front of him, and the system says that the dungeon channel has been opened for the host and asks whether he wishes to transfer. He asks whether that means there is no death penalty, since it is a training dungeon. Little tells her master that he is thinking about it a little the wrong way, because the elimination rules inside are the same as in normal dungeons. The difference is that it is not under regular supervision and is not broadcast live. So he does not need to worry about anyone discovering that he is cheating. The protagonist asks what they are waiting for, since that is exactly what he needed, and tells the system to unlock it. Little tries to stop him, telling him to wait, but once again he simply walks through the portal and finds himself in a new world. He asks whether he is in the right place and whether that really is the personal dungeon. Little says that she just checked and that dungeon is a little problematic, so he had better be careful and not suffer an unexpected setback. Chen gets irritated and says that she no longer needs to report that kind of information because it is already too late. She smiles and says that it is fine. The system screen appears saying that the conditions are clear. He needs to eliminate 99 species of sandworms. He does not know exactly what sandworms are, but he notices that something is approaching from behind him. A gigantic monster emerges from the sand. The protagonist cannot dodge in time, but avoids a direct hit and rolls backward. Several other sandworms start appearing. Little becomes desperate, asking her master whether he is okay, because he cannot be eliminated. She asks what will happen to her if he is eliminated, because she cannot die young. Chen, who is already irritated, says that if she does not want to be eliminated, then she needs to shut up immediately. The worms keep approaching to attack him, but the protagonist manages to dodge all their attacks with his speed. However, hiding forever is not a solution, because the condition is very clear. He needs to eliminate 99 worms, so the only option is to attack. He draws the Void Blade, his C-class weapon with attack power plus 5 points and a bleeding effect, along with the Void skill. If he hits the enemy target with a strike that ignores space, no matter in which direction the blade is swung, the blade energy will appear through a spatial portal at the target coordinate. The protagonist is impressed and confused at the same time, wondering how that sword can ignore space. The worms close in again to attack, and he thinks that however the sword does it does not matter, he just needs to try. He prepares himself and leaps into attack, and as he swings his sword, a wave of energy flies toward the worms. However, in truth, nothing happens, and the worms keep advancing. Little tells him to be careful, and the protagonist notices an attack coming at him and manages to defend himself, but is thrown back once again. Little runs to him again and asks if he is all right. On top of that, she wonders whether the system may have deceived him by giving false information, because it is impossible that no damage was caused. He tells her to stop saying that, because the system is very intelligent and would not make such a low-level mistake. And from what he understood, the more powerful a tool is, the more precise its method of operation must be. He tells the system to redistribute his points into strength and speed. He tries using his Void skill again, but fails once more. The protagonist realizes that is not exactly it. He used strength and speed, but still could not activate Void Slash. That may be because a C-grade weapon does not rely only on brute force. Little starts analyzing the sword and tells her master that the blade gives her a strange feeling, because the energy fluctuation coming from it is not concentrated in the blade itself. It is more like it is connected to the surrounding space. Hearing that, the protagonist focuses on the surrounding space and asks to open the weapon description. The Void Slash skill unleashes an attack that ignores space on an enemy target. No matter in which direction you swing the blade, the energy wave will appear through a spatial portal at the target's coordinates. The protagonist begins to understand the situation, because he had been trying to physically hit the target, but the core mechanism of that weapon may not be striking the target directly. In truth, the target is space itself. The worms keep approaching, and he concentrates. It is not about the blade making contact, it is about using his intent to lock onto the space where the target is. The void is not an extension, but an arrival. He uses Void Slash again and manages to decapitate one of the worms with ease. Little is impressed, saying that was incredible, but the protagonist says it is not over yet. He continues using his skill to attack the monsters. The slashes are sent rapidly through the void. The worms prepare to swallow them, and Little panics, but suddenly all of them are sliced apart, and only the worms' pieces scatter across the place. Little says that is incredibly strong and asks her master whether he is now invincible. The protagonist finally understands, because the true way to use that weapon is to combine the user's attack intent with spatial coordinates, using the blade as a medium to open a temporary spatial channel. The slash erupts directly at the target point. The focus of that skill is not the strength of the arm swing, but the precision of mental locking and spatial perception. Several more worms begin approaching, and the protagonist becomes excited because he thinks that situation is perfect, since he can use all those worms to practice his new skill. The protagonist grips the void blade tightly and charges into battle. As soon as he finishes off all the monsters in front of him, another even larger monster appears behind him. Little tells her master that the boss has appeared. As soon as they eliminate it, they will level up. Chen summons his serpent. Since the boss appeared at just the right time, he is going to use it to test the new technique he discovered. Little asks whether he is talking about the move where he can switch places with a summoned creature, because that is a skill added after the system update, and they still have not tested it, so using it directly on the boss may be dangerous. Chen stays excited and explains that there is no better way to test a skill or move than in real combat. He activates the skill and switches places with the serpent, leaving it extremely close to the boss. The serpent moves quickly and manages to bite the boss, and right after that, coils around it, making it unable to move. Chen takes advantage of that opening and leaps in to attack the boss, finishing it off with a single strike. The system congratulates the host for clearing the F-grade personal dungeon. He manages to level up twice, and all attributes gain another 5 points, on top of the 6 free attribute points he receives. 3 days later, inside the bar, some people were talking, saying that the C-rank promotion match had to be some kind of joke, because that was not a place humans should go. They had heard that only one person managed to come out alive last time, but ended up going completely insane, and it was a total disaster. Because of that, no one there would dare touch that thing, even if they were dying. So what was the point of making money if you would not live long enough to spend it? But the list of candidates for the C-rank promotion had just been released, and Chen was among them. Xu Tian was impressed to see that the protagonist was there, and that he had really signed up, but he still did not know what his chances of actually winning were. Still, regardless of that, he was fully cheering for him. Shi Yu had also heard about it and was shocked, almost crying, asking if there was really any need to push himself that hard because it would be better for him to stay alive. Tian Quan laughs, saying that the boy really showed up and that he does not know how to write the words reckless ambition. The other member says that hearing those words from his boss sounds a little strange and asks if his boss has the courage to say that to him. The young man takes the chance to tell the vice captain that he thinks that boy is doing very well and at the very least has a lot of courage. Because of that, their team needs people like the protagonist, and what he means is that whether that boy manages to pass the stage or not, as long as he survives, they should recruit him. Fei Ying just stays silent thinking, but Chen Quan reminds the two of them that there is no time to waste, so they need to go to the arena to watch. As soon as they arrive at the arena, the grand spectacle is about to begin. A woman is making the announcement welcoming everyone, because that is the site of the C-rank promotion match, the 6-day courtyard, and she is the commentator for the game, Xiao. She says that before explaining the rules, she would like all the competitors to make their grand entrances. As soon as all the competitors enter, Luo Tian, who's watching, is impressed to see that the protagonist really is not a coward, but now all he can do is hope that everything goes well. Xiao says that she will now explain the rules of the game in detail, so everyone needs to listen carefully. She explains that this game is a faction battle. All of them, 10 people in total, will be divided into 2 teams of 5 people each. One side is the plant faction. They rely on sunlight to summon plant units and specialize in stable, long-range defense. The other side is the zombie faction. They rely on summoning zombie units in a fixed sequence and possess powerful close combat advancement abilities. The protagonist thinks that Plants vs. Zombies is a classic game, and he did not expect that game to be the model for the match. A man points out that it is not just Plants vs. Zombies because they already know the rules, so it is time to stop with all the nonsense, and she needs to say what they really need to care about. He is Ethan, level 25, and has completed a total of 18 dungeons so far. Ethan continues asking what the victory conditions are, whether the factions are random or whether they can perhaps choose. He says that artificial intelligence has made it this far and apparently is still just as useless. Because of that, he would like to know what exactly those idiots at the research institute do all day. Xiao gets a little irritated but decides to continue, saying that this player asked a good question and that the condition is clear and very simple. The game consists of 6 rounds, and the factions are assigned randomly. If the zombie side breaks through the defense in any of the 6 rounds, the zombies will win. If they fail to advance through all 6 rounds, the plant side will win. She asks what they think because it is very simple, but there is something more. The players have to play as those plants and zombies, and by doing so, they will be able to acquire their abilities. But they can also choose not to play as them and enter empty-handed. However, they will only be able to use 1/10 of their original combat strength and will not be allowed to use items. She laughs, saying that this is very dangerous. Zhao Yu says that maybe, if everyone joins forces and does nothing, they could simply clear the stage without any injuries by waiting for the time to run out. Lin Xiao points out that it is probably not that simple. After all, this is a C-rank dungeon, so there should not be any loophole to exploit. Zhao walks over to him, saying that apparently he is very smart and he is right. In this game, only the winning team will survive. The losing team will be executed on the spot. And as for a draw, unfortunately, a draw is not possible in this game. A draw only means that all players will go to the underworld together. Everyone is shocked by this. Su Qian says that this means the prerequisite for clearing the stage is that at least half of the people must be eliminated. Jingshuan says that, in short, they will determine the winner and also determine who will be eliminated. Xiao begins to disappear, saying that those are all the rules of the game, so everyone should enjoy it. But before leaving, she says that she almost forgot one important thing. Once the game ends, the winning side may choose one player from the opposing team to join their group. In other words, if that person bows before the winner, they may gain a chance to live. All of them should understand very clearly what that means. She disappears and wishes good luck to all the other players. Lin Xiao asks what that means, whether, if he loses but joins the winning team, he will be able to live. Chen Ye, irritated, asks if anyone actually believes that, because this is an obvious divide-and-conquer strategy, and only a fool would believe it. Li Hao says that is exactly right. Everyone there is not a beginner, and that system loves digging traps into its rules. All of them should know this. Experience is the soul of the business. But he thinks that he really did not expect the system to pull a move like that because they need to know who is strong and who is weak. If they are placed on a weak team, they will have to find a way to defect. Zhao Yu thinks that if he can team up with Ethan, then maybe this round will be guaranteed. Chen thinks that this is already getting far too complicated. The system's previous words have probably already been engraved in everyone's mind like a thorn. Because of that, if the situation gets worse later, everyone's first reaction will probably be to change the situation and go over to the enemy's side. Jingxuan looks at the protagonist and thinks that, compared to the crisis of trust caused by the rules, the most crucial core probably lies with that guy. Reaching the C-rank promotion match at only level 13, she really does not know whether that is commendable courage or foolish ignorance. But either way, if she ends up on the same team as that guy, it would be better to figure out how to surrender, because with that burden, the victory rate is very low. Su Qian touches her shoulder and asks what kind of game Plants vs. Zombies is, and whether she can explain a little about it. Chen Ye says that it is fine if she has not played it before, she just needs to look at that picture. A single-shot shooter can kill a basic zombie with 1 bullet and so on. Mid-level zombies require 2 shots, and high-level zombies require 3 shots. The announcement is issued saying that the game is about to begin, the random team assignments have started, and the players need to prepare for the countdown. The people are a little surprised because they were not ready yet, but suddenly all of them are struck by a beam of light and lifted onto the field. Chen Ye looks to the side and says that this is not right because all the guys are on the same side. The protagonist also keeps looking around and thinks that all those people are his teammates, but he does not know how strong they are. Zhao Yu begins to despair, saying that it is all over, because that guy went to the other side and they have no chance of winning. The rules appear before them, and the protagonist carefully analyzes everything. Chen Ye thinks that currently they only have 3 suns, and it seems that the only things they can take in the first round are sunflowers and single-shot shooters. Lin Xiao thinks that preparation for the first turn is extremely important, so he believes the later rounds will be more difficult. Therefore, they must make sure they have enough sunlight, otherwise they will end up in a deadlock later. Zhao Yu, who is still completely desperate, does not know what to choose, because he thinks something is not right. If that is the case, then in the next round, only 2 suns will remain. And on top of that, the other side has that guy, so they are definitely going to die. Chen walks over to him and asks who this he is that the young man is talking about. Zhao Yu gets up and says that the protagonist does not even know that guy, because he is Ethan, a madman who does not follow the rules and scares even the players. To understand the mind of a madman, unless a person is even crazier, it is impossible. The protagonist thinks about it but gets the attention of the 2 of them, saying that it is fine. The situation is terrible, and they need a leader to coordinate the overall strategy. But if no one volunteers, then he will offer himself. Chen Ye interrupts and says it is better to let the protagonist be the commander, because he watched his last match, and he is definitely very reliable. He emphasizes to the protagonist that when he suggests a plan, everyone will listen. Lin Xiao approaches and says that it does not matter who is in charge because he will not hide anything. If the situation is bad, he will find a way out on his own. Zhao Yu remains terrified, saying that it does not matter who the leader is, because they do not see the inevitable result, which is death. Chen thinks that none of those people are easy to deal with, and if they do not first find a way to unite everyone, with the plant side already at a disadvantage, they will die even faster. Zikian asks if they still have not understood the winning strategy of that game, because that game seems to be plants versus zombies, but its core is actually something else. He smiles and everyone pays attention. He continues explaining, saying that at the beginning they have a one-shot shooter and a sunflower. The opposing team does not know how many resources they have, and this serves to confuse the opponent's strength. Secondly, it serves to test the zombie side's strength and resist the attacks. Although he does not know the opponent's rules, the dungeon made reference to plants versus zombies, so the logic should not change. They have sunlight limitations, and the other side probably has limitations too. Otherwise, if a high-level zombie appeared at the beginning, it would be impossible to fight back against it. Because of that, he believes the system would not create such an unsolvable existence. so he thinks the other side also wants to save its best items for later, and they need to bluff against them. In the second turn, they would not dare send troops, and they also do not need to do that, secretly accumulating more suns. That way, in the third round, they will have 4 suns. Everyone becomes thoughtful about this, but he continues speaking, saying that they do not need to object. Just listen, because that is the best plan for now. Chen says that he completely disagrees with that, and Zikian gets a little irritated, asking what he just said. The protagonist explains that he has to admit that the plan is somewhat reasonable, but it lacks feasibility. He continues explaining, saying that in Zikian's opinion, if the enemy wants to accumulate strength and does not mobilize in the first turn, they will have wasted 2 valuable suns for nothing. He explains that it is 4 suns. And if things happen as Zikian said, the enemy can only deploy normal zombies in the first round. Then, in the second turn, their strength will be unknown. If the enemy has enough strength and their resources are staggered, they will be at a disadvantage. Besides that, the protagonist asks how he could guarantee that no one will inform the enemy about the current resource situation they have. Zikian does not know how to answer and says that anyone can talk nonsense, asking what the protagonist's plan is. Chen laughs and says that this is the next step. He emphasizes that in the first round, they need to plant 3 sunflowers, and this leaves everyone shocked. Zikian says that this is too risky because without any defensive unit, if the other side sends a zombie, Lin Xiao smiles while thinking that the protagonist is indeed quite interesting. Chen loves taking risks and is probably betting that the zombie group would not think they would leave their defenses open. So they would probably choose not to send troops, resulting in a draw to increase their strength. And they would do the same, not sending troops out of caution. Chen says that he will go to the battlefield because the system had said that the players themselves can enter the field. If he can stop the enemies for 5 minutes, the first round will be a perfect start. Because of that, he will take all the risk of that tactic. In exchange, he wants command. Those who agree can raise their hands. Chen Ye looks around and sees that Zikian and Zhao Yu are hesitating. So he decides to take the initiative, touches the protagonist's shoulder, and raises his hand, saying that he is very bold and, because of that, has earned his respect. Lin Xiao also raises his hand. However, he emphasizes that he does not like side conversations, so he will say the unpleasant things first. He emphasizes that if he thinks the protagonist is unreliable or if there is no chance of victory, he will decisively defect to the other side. Zikian also raises his hand, saying that it is fine because he will play according to the strategies the protagonist gives. Zhao Yu also ends up giving in, saying that he has to admit that the protagonist seems crazier than Ethan, so he needs to bet that the other side will not fight. But Ethan is already excited, saying that they are all unfamiliar faces and only one is slightly familiar. Xiao warns that the first round is about to begin, and they need to make their choices. The captain can choose on behalf of everyone. Chen thinks that there is no time to assign who will be the sun. Aside from himself, they will make it random. This is a risky move, so he would like to see how far they can go. He's taken to the battlefield but feels his body completely strange and wonders if this is what it feels like for a person weakened to 1/10 because his whole body feels weak and terrible. Suddenly, Lin Xiao also appears on the battlefield, surprising the protagonist. Lin Xiao tells the protagonist not to misunderstand because he is not there to help him. He just wanted to see up close whether the protagonist has enough strength to lead the team to victory, so he had better not disappoint everyone. Chen laughs, saying that he will watch all of this with his life at risk, and that is a little crazy. Lin Xiao also laughs, saying that the one among them who can reach C rank from D rank is even crazier. The protagonist emphasizes that Zikian was right about one thing: the game is full of deception, but it really is a paradise for players. Suddenly, 2 things also enter the arena. Lin Xiao says that this is a little strange and that apparently the protagonist's prediction was a little wrong, asking what the meaning of the other side's move is. Ethan is surprised but happy at the same time to see that there is no combat unit but 2 main bodies fighting, and this is interesting. The protagonist says that this is actually a little unusual because the goal is to stop any zombies the opponent might deploy and create favorable conditions. So what is the purpose of the other side personally entering the battlefield unless Lin Xiao says that they probably cannot be considered the main combat force because if that happens, it will not be funny at all. The protagonist says that he really hopes his guess is not correct and states that he will deal with Ethan, asking Lin Xiao to eliminate the zombie. Lin Xiao says that apparently he will not be able to remain just a spectator, and the protagonist had better be able to deal with that madman. They ask if this is not Plants vs. Zombies and where exactly the zombies are going to appear. That is the zombie version of Li Hao. He asks where the plants are, but Ethan tells his companion that this is not something he needs to worry about and asks him to deal with that bird immediately. Ethan thinks about the protagonist's name and wonders if it is just a coincidence of names. With their setup, they are betting that the zombies will lose the first round and will not send zombies. Or maybe they have some trump card for the future, but first he needs to test his opponent's strength. He notices the protagonist's stance and asks if he switched to Mortal Kombat, because judging by the situation, maybe he knows some martial arts. Chen laughs and says that he has sharp eyes, asking if he would like to try. Ethan laughs and says that the protagonist is just bluffing, because he has seen ordinary people like him before and charges forward. He tries to land his blows, but Chen dodges all of them easily and notices an opening. He moves quickly, goes behind his opponent, and tries to throw him backward, but Ethan does not even move and laughs, saying that it was not a bad strategy. He attacks again and manages to land 2 blows, sending the protagonist flying away. The zombie team thinks that everything is going very well now and that they are completely safe. Meanwhile, the protagonist team is falling into despair, saying that they are completely finished now. Chen finds this very strange and wonders how this is possible if that guy really is only D rank. After all, he used all his strength just now, and it did nothing. Lin Xiao starts to worry about the protagonist, thinking that he is weaker than he had imagined. So he is not reliable at all, and if this continues, they will be completely finished. But maybe this is the best time. He tries to attack Ethan from behind, but Li Hao puts his hand in front and takes the attack. He starts mocking him, asking what he just threw because it looked like a toothpick since he does not feel any pain at all, and being a zombie is very good. Lin Xiao gets irritated by that situation, thinking that his attack was weakened into a mere dart. He attacks Li Hao, landing a kick right in his face, but it does nothing. The zombie starts mocking him, saying that his strength is extremely weak and throws him away. He gets up, and the protagonist asks if he is okay. He says yes and that he will not die yet. Ethan continues mocking the situation, saying that apparently the protagonist's luck is not very good and that apparently he has no value anymore, because he just saw it. Before absolute power, he has no chance of winning. However, he would like to offer him a chance to change his fate now. So he would like to know if he is playing that way to accumulate resources for higher level plants, because they are probably still full of sunflowers. Then, whoever answers the question first will receive an invitation to join the zombie faction's forces. Chen and Lin Xiao become worried about the situation. Zikian points out that Guy is eliminating everyone without any difficulty. Su Qian says the other team is already on the verge of defeat, so there's no reason to ask a question like that. Ming does not understand the mind of a lunatic, because sometimes they have an obsessive fixation on answers. Jingxuan asks if anyone is really going to reveal what they are planning. Ethan continues pressuring them, asking if no one is going to answer because they should not test his patience. And because of that, he will count to 3. The protagonist asks them to wait. He emphasizes that his opponent's words are full of logical gaps and are completely untrustworthy. First, he cannot confirm the authenticity of the information and needs verification in the next round. Therefore, they can only be cannon fodder. Second, after winning, he definitely will not save another person, so his promise is just an empty check. And third, how can he be so sure that he will win this round? Or rather, he questions how he could eliminate him. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.